feature presentation.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 109 of the Untitled Movie Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Matt Rohrbeck, alongside he's allergic to tomatoes, but he is tomato meter approved, Eric Marchin.
Matt, we're in the zone of interest, a time where you think about the year that has passed, you look forward to what is coming in the year ahead, and then you also wonder how long this is the, I think, the longest week of the year because nothing really happens. You're kind of at a standstill.
Yeah.
And you're just thinking to yourself, like,
especially in the times we're in right now, right? Where it's
what do I do with myself?
Which, the last 2 years, I can't believe we're going into 2022, right? But happy holidays, everyone. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas, Hanukkah, Festivus, Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate. I hope you had a wonderful time. As Eric mentioned, we're in that weird taint period of the year where it's just the in between the beginning of the year and the holidays. So
it's where all the sweat collects.
Yeah. And I mean, many people do different things this week. Everyone just says, give yourself a pass, do nothing this week. Eric and I were recording because, Nevis is safely at a cottage with some friends. They all tested before and are together and just for a couple days. So I have the bachelor pad to myself the last couple days. So what do I decide to do? Smoked a joint last night and watched Barb and Star and Shang-Chi. And then I watched 4 hours of the Try Guys just because that's what you do when you're up until 2 a.m. when you have
Baking Without a Menu or Cooking Without a Menu?
Yeah, that's a great series, but I was already caught up on that. Basically, it was all the in-between stuff, a lot of the trivia, a lot of the other cooking shows that they have. I just went down a rabbit hole of other Try Guy content that I hadn't watched. But then, I watched Barb and Star and Shang-Chi again. But then I'm like, Eric and I should get some recording done because, I hate to bother Nevis when she's home because we're in a small condo again, as everyone knows who listens to this. So it's kind of annoying when you only have a couple rooms in the place where she has to either put her headphones on or do something else. So anyways, it's that weird year where you shouldn't really be doing anything, but we decided we wanted to record because actually we enjoy doing this. We spent an hour and a half or 2 hours putting together our most anticipated films of 2022. It's a tradition on this podcast I've enjoyed doing with you, Eric, where we did 20 most anticipated for 2020, 21 most anticipated for 21. Now we have 22 most anticipated for 2022. One film, to tease it out, has appeared on all three of those lists because of the times we're in. So stay tuned for that. We'll be doing that as our big topic of the show later in the show. But Eric, how were your holidays? I know you just got boosted. I got boosted as well, so that's good.
Yeah.
Did you have a good Christmas? Did you get a big bag of Werther's Originals? Will we be saving that until April of next year? He's getting up, everybody, for audio listeners. I love this because if you remember a few months ago, is it a new bag? Oh my God, that's incredible. For audio listeners, Eric did grab a big bag of Werther's. Is this a new bag?
It's a brand new bag of Werther's Originals.
For people who aren't maybe regular listeners, there was an episode, you opened your dad's gifts from 2020 this year, halfway through the year.
Yeah,
right?
back in the summer because of 2020 being the dumpster fire that it was. Nobody
Not
got
that
together.
This year's any different, but
no, but at least we're vaccinated and you can kind of get together.
It's a little
in
bit
smaller groups.
Better,
yeah. So and yeah, I mean 2021 has its own issues, but so I had got this huge bag of Werther's, which I ended up using as Halloween candy when we ran out of Halloween candy at my house. And then
those poor kids.
Kyle and I know. I'm surprised we didn't get egged. And then Kyle and I, when we went over to my dad's place in Newtonville, both got a giant pack of Werther's Originals. And that happens. It happens every year. It's happened since I've been a child. It's so consistent. It's the most sort of consistent thing in my life when it comes to sort of gift giving and gift receiving. Like, I'm always going to get a bag of Werthers from my dad because he thinks I'm a 75-year-old man.
Think you really like them, or
I
does it
guess,
just like,
I mean, like, I don't mind butterscotch, and I think
is it a parent? Here's the thing that parents like to do. Sorry to cut you off, but my
No,
mom
it's
does
fine.
a similar thing where they fixate on one thing you mentioned to them once, or they saw you do once, and then for the rest of your life, that's a thing, or it's like whatever new thing they know that you're doing. For me this year, it was VHS tapes, collecting them. So obviously my mom saw that I was collecting VHS tapes. So I opened about 47 VHS tapes on Christmas morning. But parents like to do that. Your dad probably saw you once take a Werther's from like your grandparents' house, and he was like, that's Eric's thing. He
But
loves
he also
Werther's
does that
now.
with Connor and Kyle as well, my brothers. And
Or
like,
is it a joke? Is it kind of like satire? Is he doing it like
No.
intentionally as a laugh?
you know what it is? It's partly because he probably at one point saw us eat a Werther's and we liked it. But I think it's also partly to do with he's a man of habit. He's a creature
Sure.
of habit, where
Sure.
like a lot of people get set in their ways where it's like, okay, you know, like, I do this, I have this routine, I follow it to, you know, the 9th degree every single day. He does that. He's very regimented when it comes to any aspect of life, and especially when it comes to the holidays. So the Werthers are
It's just
always
that's the thing he does now.
the
Yeah.
stocking stuffers. Kyle and I were just on the way home, we were talking about, because like it was a pretty low-key Christmas for us this year, and we
Yeah,
were talking
same.
like driving back, and it kind of is like right now like spring weather almost, where, you know, like if you were to look outside and not know the date, you would assume it could be, you know, March and not, you know, the end of December. But we were just talking about like how predictable it is, and like we've even kind of like talked to him before. It's like, you know, you don't have to like get us like any
Werther's,
stockings,
especially Werther's.
yeah, or any other stocking stuffer stuff, because like he buys this like Axe body deodorant and things like that, and we're just like, we don't
I
use
love
any
that.
of this.
It's incredible.
But it was just nice to see them and what have you. But yeah, overall, I would say it was a pretty low-key Christmas.
Yeah.
I haven't even physically been in the same room as my newborn nephew Ivor yet. And Kyle was hoping, you know, he's flew in from Vancouver, and he'll be heading back at the beginning of January. And, you know, I totally understand why, but you know, like that would have been nice, but unfortunately that's not in the cards.
With everything right now.
But I'm also excited
Better
for
safe than
future
sorry,
Christmases where he'll become of age and aware of what Christmas is, and you can
that's
kind
always
of
fun, right?
live vicariously through them and their excitement.
Yes, that's someone else was mentioning that. Oh, my friend Nick, my old roommate Nick, he had a son last year, and he's still very young, but he was talking about how, you know, it brings a kind of new, rejuvenated kind of love for the holidays and Christmas, because you can buy your kid something, or if you have a friend's kid or whoever. Like, my mom still goes absolutely she might be listening. I know she, with her new AirPods, might be listening, because I know she likes to throw our show on YouTube and stuff like that. But God bless her, she's wonderful.
Thanks, Ann.
She loves Christmas, and she just loves getting gifts for people. And if you ever look at our Christmas tree on Christmas morning, I'm 30, turning 33. My sister's 30.
Turning
Yeah,
30.
Nevis is 30, 31. And with Nevis also celebrating Christmas with us every year now, my mom, that's extra gifts. She has to get Nevis as much as she gets Sarah and I. And every year, I don't really give a Christmas list anymore. I tell my mom to, like, let's cool it on the gifts. Let's let's tone it down a little bit. But my mom loves it so much. Every little thing she buys you, she will wrap. Like, so there ends up being like 50 gifts per person, because no matter if it's as small as a $2 VHS tape from Value Village, or a little pack of cards, or whatever, my mom will wrap it. Each individual pair of socks she'll wrap, so it looks like you have 400 gifts. Excuse me, sorry. And so this year was like the same, where we had 1 million gifts each, and she's the best. And it was nice. It was, again, a low-key Christmas for us as well, because I declined doing anything with a larger group this year. I said I was comfortable seeing my parents and my sister as long as we all tested before, which we did. Had to do it in my sister's driveway in our car, doing that rapid test, trying to like Nevis and I sitting in our, Ford Focus, trying to do this rapid test together. But we did it. We're all okay. Got together. We were going to get together with my mom's side of the family, but because that group was going to be a little bit larger, um, I've been very strict when it comes to all the COVID stuff. Like, again, I was going to go to Critics' Choice, but because of the Omicron thing and it being canceled, we have to cancel our LA trip now. So we also declined getting together with my mom's side of the family because it was going to be more than 10 people. I'm sure, everyone was going to test and stuff, but it was still one of those things where we were trying to avoid large gatherings. So we just kind of had a low key Christmas at my parents' place in Clarington, over in the old retirement village at Wilmot Creek, not to docks where my parents are, but they are having it's very quiet there, very lovely. We just had nice holidays with them. Got a couple things. What do I have here? Movie stuff. I got Jurassic World collection, nice steelbook on 4K. I didn't own Jurassic Park on 4K yet. I had a digital 4K, and then I'm like, well, if I'm gonna get Jurassic Park on 4K, I might as well get the rest because I actually do like The Lost World, and I am nostalgic for the third movie, even though it's not very good. But the Alan on the airplane always makes me laugh. And then I have the two Jurassic World movies on 4K now, even though Fallen Kingdom is terrible. And then other Christmas stuff, I got a whole bunch of VHSs. I don't have them here. I got a giant, I don't know if you can see it over there, but the History of Marvel Studios, this giant coffee table double volume book that I'm excited to go through. And some video games I got. I played so much NHL 22 yesterday. Your brother would be happy. There's my boy Austin Matthews on the cover. And then I also got Guardians of the Galaxy, Eric. They made a video game. I haven't played it yet, but looking forward to playing that. So, got some good gifts. And movie-wise, the Marvel Studios and the Jurassic World thing were probably the biggest movie gifts that I got. Nevis got me a wonderful new jacket. She got me a projector, which is actually in the realm of movie stuff. So in the summer, we can kind of sit out on the balcony and watch stuff outside on the projector. So some lovely gifts from Nevis as well. Some new lighting I'm going to put up, but it was a good time, man. It was, I always love Christmas. I am a sucker for the holidays, and like, I love Christmas music. I love Christmas movies. I watch the same, handful of Christmas movies every year, like, Elf and the Santa Claus and Muppet Christmas Carol, which is my favorite Christmas movie. I watched Klaus for the first time this year. It's been out for a few years, but I just never caught it. Have you watched it?
Yeah, I watched it the year it was released. It was with J.K. Simmons and Jason Schwartzman, right?
Yeah, it's cute. Because we did the episode where we talked about what was the last Christmas classic, and this was like the question I kept bringing up to everyone. Brought it up to my family. My dad loves a Polar Express, so that was his choice. But
does he love hot chocolate though?
He does. He made a hot chocolate when I was there, actually, at one point. And I proposed that question. They voted for Polar Express. I still think it's probably Elf, but I know a few people online said that Klaus had. I think Klaus and A Christmas Chronicles are the two that had the potential, both Netflix films, to be considered classics, or maybe moving forward be in that, category of stuff people revisit all the time. And I think people will, both of those movies, the first Christmas Chronicles and Klaus, but I don't think either of them really hit those highs of some of these other movies. Even like the quality of the Santa Claus isn't great, or things like that. But I just feel like they have this iconic kind of quality, and maybe that's nostalgia playing in that. Maybe we need some years to go by before we kind of look back at those movies. But I liked Klaus, but I wasn't blown away. Like I liked the animation style. I thought it was really clever in the way that they took all um the myths of Santa Claus and kind of the origins of how those kind of things got passed down. And I thought it was really, really clever. I just, there was something missing that made it special for me. Um, but watch that over the holidays. I, got my mom into Cobra Kai,
Oh
which
yeah.
as you guys are listening to this, we're allowed to talk about season 4. Eric and I have both watched it. Eric, I think, is in the either has finished rewatching it or you're in the middle of a rewatch of season 4.
Oh, I'm done. We
Are
like
you?
literally Kyle and I and my stepfather, like this was the thing that I loved the most during this year's holidays, was that I just got to hang out with
Family. Yeah.
family, and especially with
It's all
Kyle,
about family. I watched F9 with Nevis.
who I don't get to see physically much at the moment because he's in Vancouver. We just watched movies together, and we just we literally binged watched Cobra Kai, and the first night of watching it we got through like 7 of the 10 episodes, and we just couldn't, like, we literally had to like tear
Like, we
ourselves
have to go to
away.
bed. Yeah.
Yeah, from watching it, and that goes to show you how addictive that show is.
Yeah.
But also how entertaining it is.
Eric and I will have a review probably by the time you're listening to this. It should be up.
Yeah, I'll just say it's karate time.
Oh my god, it's so good, dude. I'm in the middle of rewatching the whole series now. So like basically Nevis and I, it's wild how early we got that show too, cuz we got it in October, and I remember it was before I moved here. Um and I was at the old place. I think it was the week of moving, and my jaw hit the floor when I got that Netflix screener like email that we get every week. So for inside baseball stuff, we get basically how the Netflix screeners work is that each week we get an email dump on Wednesdays that are like, here are the new screeners that are in your account. And on the TV side of things, it's just, whatever new Netflix originals are coming out, we get like a list of like, here are the screeners in your account, here are the screener letters, embargoes, what you can and cannot talk about. Cobra Kai coming out, on New Year's Eve, not expecting middle of October to get an email being like, season 4 is in my account right now, and it's the middle of October, and I just dropped everything and I like ran up to Nevis because I got her into it when season 3 was coming out, which is when I got into it. And my jaw hit the floor, and I was like, we need to immediately watch this. So after moving, I watched it back in October, and I mean, we're going to review it, and it's still pretty fresh in my head. I'll go through just to refresh my brain of the episode descriptions, but man, I said it's the greatest show on television, and people said that was a bold statement, and I'm not afraid to say that, because like it is my favorite thing. I hope we get another one of these every year for the next 20 years.
Well, they're already
like,
done shooting season 5,
which is incredible, because then I'm like, do we have to wait till next December, or are we getting this in like August or something, or like even earlier? Like, because I guess they shot them back to back. That's what they said, which is fantastic. And it is. If you are listening to this and you have not watched Cobra Kai, and we'll probably reiterate this in our review, it's like, drop whatever you're doing, rewatch all 4 Karate Kid movies. And I know some people are like, oh, the 4th one, we got to watch the 4th one. I'm not teasing anything. I'm just saying it's part of the Miyagi verse. You got to watch the 4th one, even if it has nothing to do with Cobra Kai. Then you got to watch all 4 seasons of Cobra Kai, because it is some of the most enjoyable shit I've ever seen in my life. Like, it's so much fun. Like, if you like Fast and the Furious and that kind of like cheesy soap opera kind of, both, it's ridiculous, but it is sincere, and it's just, the action is fun, and just like, it is, I think it's surpassed Fast and Furious for me of being like the epitome of like both machismo but also weirdly sweet and genuine, and like having really great character beats, probably way better than even the Fast movies do. And just like some genuinely good performances, and the best way of using nostalgia and that legacy sequel, like I think it is the best representation of, you know, the legacy sequel and how to do it, especially in a TV series, which I would have just never expected from the Karate Kid movies, which I had no attachment to at all. Like other than knowing of them, my biggest frame of reference for the Karate Kid movies was Ninja Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze, where Michelangelo does wax on, wax off in April's apartment. And like that to me, I knew was from Karate Kid, but like I liked the Ninja Turtles more than Karate Kid. So that was my frame of reference. And I watched them all for the first time last year. And I'd seen the first Karate Kid, but I barely remembered it. But anyways, we shouldn't go too long on this because you can check out a review for Cobra Kai 4 on the reviews channel right now.
Yeah,
But
I was thinking about it a lot while watching The Matrix Resurrections as well,
Yeah.
and thinking about like
which you guys can check out a review of that as well soon-ish. I don't know when it'll be up.
Yeah, how you mentioned the legacy sequel, but how it also is kind of playing with the kind of meta narrative and sort of
Yeah.
like looking at itself in an introspective kind of manner, and also being self-aware that this movie takes place within, or the series takes place within a world that isn't necessarily the real world, but
Mhm.
also knows that it's within this sort of context of like, okay, what we're picking and choosing to reference that are movies, but also movies that we, or this series and the film series has, you know, blatantly ripped off or taken for its own sort of formula. And I find that that's really fascinating, and how it kind of all plays with that. And then again, it's expanding on the world building that was already there. I mean, it wasn't really much of a world to begin with, but what it has created in the Cobra Kai series is both fascinating and again just so watchable. Like it's one of those shows that when you start, you know, from either the beginning of the series, or if you're you know, you've been watching from season 1 to now season 4, and when you start season 4 when it's available on December 31st, it's hard to tear yourself away from it.
It has to be the most watchable show on TV. If you don't agree with the best show on television, it's definitely the most watchable, or like easily watchable. Like if it's on, you just want to, like you said, you just want to keep eating it and keep like, you just can't, it's once you pop, you just can't stop. You know, it's Pringles. It's so good.
And I think Johnny
Um,
Lawrence is one of the great characters in television going right now.
I agree, dude. And who would have ever thought?
Yeah, and
Like,
I can't wait to talk more about like Terry Silver as well.
oh my god. I know there's a lot of stuff we have to dance around, but go check out that review because I can't wait to talk about that with Eric. So we should probably have a way more in-depth conversation over there. Other than that, Eric, watching on my end, I did check out a couple new Blu-rays that are coming out either soon or already have
Oh,
come out, I
they're
think.
already both available now to purchase.
I thought No Time to Die was, or no, that's Dune that comes out on the 11th.
Yeah.
But both No Time to Die and The Mitchells versus the Machines, which I have right here. If you're on YouTube, you can check those out. Did get review copies over from our friends at Sony to check those out. Quickly, like if you're looking for reviews on Blu-rays from us, you're not getting the super technical. You know, if you listen or watch a show, that I'm very particular about quality and but I'm not very nerdy when it comes. If you want great in-depth, you know, reviews, go to Digital Bits, go to Blu-ray.com, things like that. But if you want kind of an overall impression on if these are worth picking up, then you're in the right spot. One of my favorite movies of the year, Mitchells versus the Machines, needed to pick up a physical copy of this because we know that it got, you know, put on Netflix. Didn't really get a theatrical release. I think it got a short window when everything, you know, became okay again earlier in the year. It might have played a few places, but I was thrilled when we heard that this was getting a physical release, so I had to kind of pick it up and check it out. Super creative, just like the movie. Menus all look like Criterion menus. I thought that was really, really cute. It's basically got an insert from Katie Mitchell, director's notes as well. And I'm just like a sucker for like packaging. Like look at these discs if you're on the video version. Like basically they're like look like burnt CDs and DVDs and Blu-rays, and it's got like Katie did all the art on it. I know it's kind of hard to see. I think that's better in focus there. But just like the attention to detail that they do on this, of looking like Criterion menus and having Katie be the one that put together this like physical release, because she's such this film dork that makes movies and stuff like that. I did watch Dog Cop 7, the final chapter, which was very, very cute. Not great by any means, but a really fun kind of like if Katie made this live action version and they use a doll and puppets just like she does in the movie for the Dog Cop movies. And it's like a full 8-minute short. I did check out the Katie like super version of the movie as well. I forget what exactly, I think it's like the Katie's extended cinematic bonanza cut, which they did a similar thing for Spider-Verse as well, I think, where basically they do a lot of storyboards and deleted scenes and things like that and kind of edit it into this alternate version of the movie. Not going to be everyone's cup of tea. And I think it's a really cool feature to have, especially for a movie if you're like really obsessed with it and you've seen it a bunch of times and you just kind of want to see what was left on the cutting room floor for whatever reason. I think it's just fun to see that process of them putting together this movie and all of the ideas that they have, and maybe not everything made its way into the movie. It is a little jarring to kind of just see cinematics and like especially they don't have the voice cast do a lot of the voices for those scenes because it never made it that far. So, and they even have like a thing at the beginning saying like basically you have Mike Renata and some of the other people who worked on the movie just doing like basically temp voices for a lot of the stuff for the storyboarded scenes and stuff like that. It's cool, just not necessarily like I think it's a cool feature to have, but it's a weird way to watch the whole movie. But if you've seen it a whole bunch of times, I can understand that being kind of fun. But and then all the kind of other special features is something for a movie like this, which I'm like obsessed with. One of my favorite movies of the year. I do really love. Like it's something that I do miss is like I get a lot of my stuff digital now, and you can go in and find those special features, but I feel like you don't usually do that when you have a digital version. You just kind of hit play and watch the movie like it was a streaming service or something like that. So I feel like, me, even someone who's mostly switched my whole library over digitally
or VHS
digitally or VHS, which is what I'm doing now. Is like I'm collecting a lot of movies on VHS just because like it's a novelty item to me to collect. Like I love your Behind You, Eric, and anyone who hasn't watched the YouTube version should go see Eric's collection behind him. I think it's very, very impressive. And even for me, who's a quality dork, the 4K Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos versions that you can get on Apple or on Netflix or things like that, like look good enough to me. Like they do look not even good enough. I think they look really, really good, especially like Disney with I have some impressions on the Disney IMAX stuff too that I want to get to, but they look great. But there was something like, even when I popped in this Blu-ray, which is not even a 4K, they didn't put it out on 4K. It's just, I think the only way to get it on 4K is on Apple, like iTunes, to buy that version. I don't even think Netflix has the 4K version unless they've updated it. I don't know if they did at the time, but special features are great on this. It looks fantastic. You can still tell with like the bit rates and stuff on a disc, and especially in audio quality, which I'll get to on No Time to Die as well. Like, it's just superior. And I agree with that. Like it is the best way to watch these movies is a physical disc. I just think it's so close now with that 4K digital version that like, that's why I've moved over to only getting my favorite movies, which we'll cover on next week's show, our best of 2022. But like my favorite movies of each year are usually the ones I pick up on Blu-ray, which is why I wanted to check out Mitchell's versus the Machines and No Time to Die. And then even popping in Mitchell's versus the Machines and putting it on again, I'm like, man, this looks better than the Netflix version. There's no there like and most not everyone would be able to tell, but right when I put the disc on, just seeing the way, and I mentioned this in our review for Mitchell's versus Machines, that like they do this like faux film grain that really kind of makes the animation really work, that kind of blend of styles. But like right when you put this on, it just like there's a clarity and like a tactile, like again, just like you would see film in a theater when you put a Blu-ray in, like that quality, especially when it's done really, really well and you can tell that they care about putting out a physical version. It looks great. You're smirking because you see like it's like Eric was right. Hashtag, is that what you're saying? Like,
Well, no, I just
um,
I love everything you're saying.
yeah,
This is a great promo for physical media, but
yeah.
also like I agree with you in the sense that like the 4K Apple digital versions of films are also great for movies that maybe, to your point, you're on the fence about like owning a physical copy, or whether you maybe liked it enough to consider owning it, in your iTunes library. It's like, okay, like I don't want to have this thing sitting on my shelf and taking up
Mhm.
room. I totally understand that. But what I love about this film as well, and you mentioned it, is that they're putting effort into the packaging in a way that
Yeah.
the only other person that kind of does this with non-boutique films is someone like David Fincher, where you look at the way that he
Fincher does really care about like, which is also usually Sony that he's been working
yeah,
with
so
too.
you look at The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, or The Social Network, or even with Fox with Gone Girl, the way that he puts his stamp on the actual Blu-ray packaging of those movies. I'm actually going to grab one right now. Let's
Yeah, and no, I totally agree with you, dude. And that's the kind of stuff that I feel like studios need to do. And that's why boutique labels like Criterion and even what Neon's been doing with their end of year packages and stuff like that. Like
So you look at Gone Girl, right?
oh, Gone Girl's such an Social Network's another really good
And
one
and
too.
Gone Girl is kind of like put together as though it were the Amazing Amy books.
Yeah, it's great. And that's the type of stuff that makes you want to buy the physical version, right? Like no
Especially for films that you love, where like it's like they're
yeah.
putting that extra effort in for you to be like, okay, not only do I like this movie, but now you're representing everything I like about this movie in its in its
Yeah.
packaging.
And the cover for Mitchell's looks great too. And like I don't know if I didn't get a slip cover on the review copy. I don't know if
Oh
it comes with
shit!
one. You're just dropping stuff now.
Oh yeah,
It's okay.
Godzilla
Um
went flying.
um do you know if it comes with a slip cover or not?
It
Like,
does,
cuz
yes.
okay, so this one my review copy did not. So I'm assuming the slip cover is great and I'm going to probably be anal and now have to try to find just the slip cover somewhere
Well, I
and
ordered
buy it.
mine on eBay because I
Yeah.
also like ordering mine without French on it. So,
I know that's the one thing I will.
yeah,
It's small, but and the way that the cover art still looks like, if we're gonna criticize anything from the Canadian side of things, if we're doing a review, and I know it's like a legal thing, so there's
yeah,
not much like the studio can really do, but I do appreciate that. I think Warner Brothers and some other people, Disney used to do it too. Where they would just put the sticker that said version français included or
yeah.
whatever, and that was the best way of doing it. Sorry, or you should have put out two different versions. So if I'm going to criticize something, I do not love the French title, even though
It's
it's
better.
small and it's like it, and because it's an artistic cover, it's kind of hidden.
Yeah,
Um,
where No Time to Die, it's pretty.
it's egregious. So
Yeah,
moving on to No Time to Die. Similar thoughts. One of my favorite movies of the year. The special features incredibly lacking on this, I will say. Like there's one documentary that's like 40 minutes long. That's like, your typical kind of standard, Blu-ray special feature kind of thing. Um, but other than that, it's just a bunch of, random 6-7 minute stuff that they just throw on there. This looks and sounds spectacular. Again, this is actually a 4K version. Comes out January 11th on 4K, I believe so. And
I thought it was
just I
available now, the physical copy though.
No, I'm thinking Dune comes out June 11th.
Yes.
Sorry, I keep getting
Yes.
that
So
stuck in my
Mitchell's
head.
versus the Machine and No Time to
Machines,
Die are
both
now
available now.
Yes.
Thank you. Eric is the Blu-ray master. He knows this stuff. Dune, which we're not reviewing, that was just a copy that was given to us. We can talk about it, but this looks and sounds incredible on 4K. Can't wait to rewatch the entire thing again with Nevis because she still hasn't seen it. So I'm so thrilled I got this version of it so I can not have to watch it on like DVD quality or anything like that. But the 4K, the sound, the opening credits, everything just looks incredible. The movie is a very, very pretty movie. And I thought that when we saw it at Scotiabank and then seeing it on 4K again, both of these are definitely worth picking up. The only thing I'd say is like No Time to Die doesn't have great special features, but that might not matter to you. It doesn't really matter to me for something like Bond. I mean, being the last Daniel Craig movie, maybe I would have liked it a cool retrospective or something like that. But
they'll put that on like a future edition because you know that like they'll probably re-release it closer to when the next Bond
in a whole set, right?
Exactly. And that's the thing with Bond series or any franchise films where it's like if you're buying the individual film and it doesn't really have any special features on it, you know that they're going to save those for another edition, especially if it's a continuing franchise. So you'll probably get one of No Time to Die in another sort of updated Bond legacy collection, and it'll probably have more features on that one, and maybe to your point like a retrospective on Daniel Craig's tenure as Bond, but also maybe some more stuff behind the scenes. But yeah, I think Linus Sandgren's cinematography and Kerry Fukunaga's direction in that movie is really, really well done, and it is a very melancholy addition to the Bond franchise and keeping within the continuity of it all. So
yeah,
two really good movies that you can buy now on Blu-ray and 4K and physical media versions, and both
Dolby Atmos, Dolby Vision.
Great stuff. And both do have slip covers. So
if
you're crazy like me,
like Eric said, the French is a little bit more egregious here. That is not great. Again, if I'm gonna critique it, I'm gonna critique it. So but the movie, it sounds and looks amazing. And then Dune, Eric and I both got Dune, which isn't a review copy. We aren't even obligated to talk about it, but and you guys know our thoughts on Dune, but I am
who doesn't?
I am excited. It is also playing the Cinesphere this week, which does have 50% capacity and social distancing, so I'm almost tempted to give it another shot there, because before we vote for Critics' Choice, I do want to give it another fair shot with
you do want to give it another shot
with tempered expectations. And I popped in this 4K and yeah, it looks phenomenal. I almost wish they had the expanded aspect ratios for the IMAX scenes, which they do not, but that's because, and here's the thing. So now let's use that to segue into the IMAX stuff on Disney Plus, Eric, if you don't mind.
Sure, go for it.
So the IMAX stuff, not on the Dune disc, because Denis Villeneuve, I think he's one of those guys that, if you're going to see the IMAX version, you're going to see the IMAX version in the theater. The swapping aspect ratios and stuff like that doesn't necessarily work on at home sometimes. So that leads me into the IMAX enhanced versions of movies on Disney Plus. Have you checked out any of these yet, Eric, or no?
No, but I know you talked about it before.
I was excited for it,
when it was announced. Yeah,
and I think it's a great thing that you still have the option for. And people were like, "Well, why would you ever want to watch the other version?" And I'm like, "There is a reason, because I put on Iron Man, and Iron Man wasn't even originally in IMAX. I think they did it for the 10th anniversary. They re-released a bunch of Marvel movies in IMAX, and they ended up doing a different cut of it in IMAX. So it has some expanded scenes, and I noticed it way more so I have two frames of reference here. I've put on a whole bunch of them just to kind of see what they look like. But my biggest ones are probably one of the most recent one, which is Shang-Chi, and the first one, which is Iron Man. And you can really tell the difference in the two movies because of the blocking and the camera setups. Because in the first Iron Man movie, they weren't, I think, blocking for that expanded aspect ratio at all. And I think in some of the earlier Marvel stuff that has that expanded IMAX aspect ratio, everything looks a little weird, because if you're looking at me on YouTube right now as a frame of reference, and my voice might be quieter because I'm moving back. See how there's like this much empty space above my head? Imagine the whole time I left this much empty space at the top of the frame, but everything else was down here. It looks weird, right? And like, and mind you, if you're framed that way and you stay there, then that's one thing. But like, there's so much empty space at the top of the frame that everything looks off, and it kind of throws off the composition of all of the cinematography in Iron Man in all of those scenes.
Yeah, Matthew
because
Libatique's cinematography specifically.
because
yeah.
especially in that movie, which was never even got an IMAX release with an expanded aspect ratio, they went back, looked at the camera negatives, and because when you shoot things digitally, which is how they were able to do this with Skyfall and other things, you just open the frame up, right? You're shooting a movie in way and you're blocking it for 239, and essentially you're cropping the image, right, to get that 239 widescreen. So when you're shooting the movie, you still have that stuff at the top and bottom of the frame, but you're not planning to use that space. Your shot composition on your monitor and how you're shooting it has that 239 aspect ratio. And even for these movies that do play IMAX, they're still blocking and composing the shot for 239, because you have to make sure everything fits into that frame for people who are seeing that version. So I think for movies like Shang-Chi, and as Marvel have gotten, deeper and understand making these IMAX versions, like the cinematographers are looking at, okay, this has to work for both versions. And in something like Shang-Chi and the action sequences specifically, and the whole movie is in full frame because they are shooting it digitally, and they're like, well, we can do that, so why not just open the whole frame up? And I do agree that like on your TV, because it fits more of your TV, it does look really nice. And I feel like they've gotten better at framing their stuff. But in Iron Man, dude, it looks so weird. Like I don't even know if that's the version I'd want to watch, because like, and other people have made good points too. It just like, it throws off even like the feel of certain scenes and stuff, right? Like when a close up now looks bigger because you've opened the frame up, it just kind of throws off the vibe of certain scenes. So I noticed it a lot in Iron Man, because you'd have like Tony standing there and he's just talking, and there'd be like this much empty, like just emptiness at the top. And I made a joke about Dune being like, oh great, you get to see more fucking sand with the aspect ratio. And that was in one of the IMAX ads of being like, look at, you get 40% more screen. And they showed a sequence where like sand was just shooting out of the ground. And I'm like, okay. But in Shang-Chi, like even the fight on the side of the tower, and a lot of the action sequences, like with that full frame to open up, it actually shows more of the action and looks really, really cool. So I'm of two minds of it. Like, I think it's a little bit gimmicky, and obviously the more recent stuff is better for it. And because it's just, they open up the frame for the whole movie. So like Black Widow, Shang-Chi, and I think Eternals, which is coming in early January, all have like full frame IMAX. Like it doesn't swap back from 239 and IMAX stuff. But it's a cool option to have. I just like, I was a little thrown off watching Iron Man the other day and putting it on, that it was like a little bit weird, to the point where I'm like, I don't know if this is the version I would suggest people watch, because it's not, it just goes back and forth, and it's like, they probably could have made the whole movie full frame, but they just decided to do action sequences in full frame because they realized the dramatic stuff does not work at all, because it's, the shot composition is completely off. So anyways, that's my nerdy IMAX breakdown for Disney Plus. Eric, you've been, anything else you want to mention that you've been watching, or
Yeah, so as I said, my brother Kyle was over for the holidays, and he wanted to watch a couple of things, and some of it is stuff that I already watched. So we rewatched Red Rocket. Simon Rex is still, I think, one of the best actors of the year in that role of Mikey Saber. It's just incredible to watch him just completely manipulate those around him. And yeah, I it's going to be one of those things where it's like, I know he's not going to get an Oscar nomination, but we're going
I
to look
hope he
back at
does,
it.
but I would.
We're going to look back at it and be like, why didn't this happen? Because it truly is, I think, one of the best performances of the year. Went to see Spider-Man No Way Home at Landmark Cinema. Kyle hadn't seen the movie yet, so we went on Christmas Eve. We went to a 7 o'clock showing. Still like the movie. Don't necessarily love it the way that maybe you do, but I still found that the screenplay, once it kind of, gets its pacing going, it really kind of, continually swings its way to the end, and it's very entertaining and very thoughtful and fun. um One thing I think is worth mentioning is that Landmark in Whitby, what they were doing in terms of reinforcing wearing masks due to the Omicron variant being something that's spreading, is they had staff come out about 5 minutes before the screening was to begin and sort of give everybody kind of a rundown of what, to do, and make sure everybody was sitting in their designated seats. And um, during the film itself, they had people, staff members, employees, wearing sort of using night vision technology to make sure people had their masks on, which was very much appreciated. So you'd see staff members walking up and down the aisles to reinforce it if someone was taking their mask off, or trying to eat something, because even concessions was closed at that point. So I really do appreciate that. And then I finally got around to watching the Hamaguchi movie, Drive My Car, which I have to say is one of the most introspective and poignant movies of last year. And the 3 hours was kind of something that I was a little bit apprehensive about going into it, but watching it, I didn't want it to end. And it's a story that's driven by its characters first and foremost, and it sort of includes the idea of what it means to be alone, and looking at sort of the process of what it's like to be an artist, but also extrapolating material that has been done time and time again. The main sort of storyline is you have this Japanese playwright who uh, loses his wife, and also is in the process of putting together his Uncle Vanya play, which is, has been done so many times. And it's about finding sort of the truth within that, and sort of how it's done culturally, and represents sort of other people in terms of their points of view and their perspective. And I don't want to get into it too much without people seeing the movie, but it honestly is one of those films that continues to surprise you as you watch the movie, in both a technical sort of aspect in terms of direction and screenplay mechanics, but also just in terms of how humane it is, and honest it is, and raw, in exploring, interpersonal relationships, and how we sort of self-sabotage, but also trying to find meaning or understanding in something that maybe we lost along the way, or that we can't really find closure to. And I think all those things in this film make it one of the best of the year. And it's, again, one of those movies where you're watching it and it is so beautifully put together, and the geography of the film, because it takes place mostly in Hiroshima, and you have the main character being driven from the festival residency, where he's putting together this play, back to his hotel, which is on an island just off of Hiroshima. And going back and forth, he listens to this tape of Uncle Vanya again and again and again. And Patty Chayefsky has been done so many times. Like the idea of, like, the loaded gun, like that's where that comes from, right? Where, like, you see a loaded gun in act 1, and then in act 3 it's going to go off. That's kind of where that sort of plot device comes from, is from his plays. And Chayefsky also wrote Network. And so it's just interesting to see this guy go back and forth and these long extended scenes of him listening and re-listening to certain moments and sort of playing the lines of this character and listening to it, but also sharing this relationship with this driver and how it kind of forms. And again, like, it takes certain elements that you think like, oh, okay, this is the reason why this character is going to be driven around, but then it's like, okay, no, there's another reason for it. It's not, the reason that it's set, it's almost like a red herring in a weird way, but it works so beautifully. So yeah, I highly recommend Drive My Car.
Cool. Yeah, I definitely need to watch it before it got nominated for Best Foreign Film,
Yeah.
right? Or Best International Feature.
Yeah, and
so
it truly deserves that nomination, but I also think it's worthy of being nominated for Best Picture or Directing or Screenplay and Editing. Like, it just, it's
do you think I have a chance for any of that? I know we mentioned that he could make it in for Best Director, maybe.
Yeah, I think Screenplay as well. I think Screenplay is a place where it does have a shot, and even like, if more editors look at it, because again, it is a long movie, and it doesn't necessarily have to be 3 hours long. But there's nothing in that film that I would cut. Like, watching the movie, I was thinking, okay, like, where is something that is like maybe quote unquote too self-indulgent, or something that it's like you could get to the point a lot quicker. There's nothing in this movie that I would that if you were to lose it, I think you would lose. You would be basically, it'd be like Jenga, where you're pulling, a piece out and it would all collapse without it. I think you need every sort of moment and monologue that's in this movie, and conversation about life and relationships, and sort of the regrets that we have and the guilt that we have when it comes to how we treat one another, and how we sort of have those kind of regrets in life where you think like, oh, what if I did something different? Like, maybe I blame myself for certain things. So yeah, it is a really, really great film. And I know that it'll be, because it's being released through Janus Films, and I believe that it is playing at places like the TIFF Bell Lightbox, but Criterion will be releasing a Blu-ray of it sometime probably next year.
Nice. Love it. Anything else from your Christmas watch that you want to bring up?
Just those I think are the main ones. But yeah, Drive My Car, really, really a lovely film, and it's a pro dog movie. There are multiple dogs throughout the film, and again, used in very subtle ways. So how can you not love a movie that is pro dog? So yeah, I definitely recommend watching that one.
Love that. For me, I think the only thing F9 I watched with Nevis,
which could also be called Drive My Car.
Yeah, it could also be Drive My Car. Yeah,
and
very
Simon
different.
Rex needs to join that franchise.
Yeah, Simon Rex should be in the Fast and Furious franchise for sure. Rewatched F9 with Nevis. A funny experience watching it with her, because we both had a very tepid response to F9, where I think we were excited for it. It was probably the first big movie I remember going to see with you after it was one of our first return to theater movies, right?
It was that an escape room too. Yeah. That was a wonderful day.
Oh God, yeah. Go listen to that review.
The movies.
They're back. But yeah, you know what? I had more fun with it on rewatch. Again, I think I ate like an edible, so I was a little bit high watching it with definitely helps. But like, I stand by that. I think all of the young Dom, young Jacob flashbacks are awesome. And like, opening up on that like 1980s Universal logo is such a fucking hilarious beginning to that movie. And then having all of the Dom and Jacob flashbacks at the racetrack with their dad, and then how they continuously like revisit that, and how overly dramatic. I love the Fast franchise, and like I think all of the present day stuff, I stand by, it's missing Jason Statham, The Rock, Paul Walker. Like, I really feel like it's missing their presence, and it feels weirdly empty, or weirdly kind of just going through the motions, even with James Wan, or not James Wan. God, what's his name? Justin Lin, coming back to the franchise and directing it. It just feels like there's so much weird like energy, and with the faux film grain, or whether he shot those sequences on film, which I hope he did, which is incredible. But all those flashbacks, I just have the biggest smile on my face. Like when they go back and the Prodigy song comes on and they're doing the like Fast and Furious 1 street race, it's like that scene rips so fucking hard. It's so awesome. I remember going like rewatching it, I was like, this scene rules. Why doesn't the rest of the movie rule? And there's still like a lot of fun, ridiculous moments. But like a lot of it, like I feel like John Cena maybe just like, even though on paper it's like, yeah, he seems perfect for Fast and Furious. John Cena is the type of bad that like Vin Diesel trying really hard and taking everything so seriously, and being so sincere when it comes to the Fast movies like works. John Cena just like for some reason feels phony, and like in everything he is in, he's like taking it seriously and he's trying to be serious. It's just like it doesn't work in the same way where I'm like, I believe that you believe in this. It's like every time I see John Cena, at least in something like this, like or Bumblebee or whatever, where he's playing this type of like macho, serious guy kind of thing, it's like I don't feel like even he believes it. Where like in when he's being a little bit more comedic, I kind of buy into it, but like anytime, and I just do not think that he works in the movie at all, and he's just not very compelling.
He's better in the Suicide Squad, I think. I think James Gunn is
Yes,
able to kind of the way that Gunn,
see his strengths
yeah,
and play into them.
and it's the same way. Although I think Dave Bautista is a much better actor, but the way that he saw something in Dave Bautista for the Guardians movies and played to his strength of being, again, sort of almost oblivious to everything that's going on and being so literal, really worked in sort of kind of bringing him into the fold. And then with John Cena in the Suicide Squad, he's playing a character that is very much representative of probably what's even, in his wrestling career in terms
Yeah.
of like how he's been portrayed as kind of, an American sort of folklore hero type that's kind of Johnny Appleseed. And then also a little bit of like even Captain America. And with that, I think it works, but I think it works because he's a part of an ensemble, and the acting more so in the Suicide Squad than in the Fast movies is a cut above than what's to be expected. And I think that kind of helps a little bit more, where it's like, as much as I enjoy kind of, the, genuine, but also self-seriousness of Vin Diesel, a lot of the performances are base level at best.
Oh, they're awful, but that's what
Yeah.
kind of brings a charm to the Fast movies, is like you expect that and want that. But there's something from John Cena that just feels like, man, you're trying really hard, but you're not even on the same level of sincerity or bad that everyone else is on, that it just like feels like he just didn't mesh with that group, I feel like. And it just feels weirdly empty by the end of it. And like, having Charlize Theron come back, and not enough Kurt Russell either. Like,
As
I
Mr.
just,
Nobody and Cypher.
yeah, like Cypher is hamming it up. I love that she just has a different haircut, and I feel like every time she shows up, she just have another really dumb haircut, but still looks
And then
great.
she's become
because it's
Hannibal
just
Lecter in a way.
Yeah,
In this one where
yeah.
she's in that prison.
And that whole Star Wars conversation just like doesn't really work and stuff like that. Being like, you're Yoda. Also, we're on the eve of Boba Fett, which I feel like no one cares about. Like,
I know the only thing I'm curious about, I just want to see the Sarlacc pit again. That's all I want.
I've had a cold brew and a Coke Zero. It's 8:00. I might be up at 3 a.m. So I might just watch it. Well, we might have a review of the first episode, which I think is a good segue. We can talk about Hawkeye, but like, anyways, F9, watch it with Nevis. Even halfway through the movie, Nevis was like, I don't know about this one. Like, Nevis, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
No, it's perfectly fine, I think, but the Fast franchise at this point has peaked, and I think,
and
like,
even with the space stuff, you'd think, and it's still ridiculous and fun.
Yeah, but like with 5, it was kind of like this course correction and sort of going in a new direction that kind of surprised a lot of people, and I do think that it is still the best of the franchise. And then it was like, okay, this is really unexpected, and it really is now being self-referential and
But
irreverent to a
now,
certain degree.
and all that stuff doesn't work either.
No.
Because going back to my point of being, what I love about Fast and Furious is that it's not a meta wink. We know this is kind of goofy. It's like, no, I want you to take it seriously. That's part of the charm, is that soap opera kind of, this is, everyone in this movie believes that this is the fucking biggest franchise drama action thing of the history of cinema. Like, that's why I love it. So when you have Roman and Tej going like, are we invincible? Are we in a movie? Like, why can't I get shot? Is like, no, I don't want that. Like, I don't want you to talk about that. No, I don't want you to wink at the audience and at the camera saying like, we get that this is silly.
And Tyrese
like,
isn't that funny of an actor. I think Ludacris actually has some sort of moments of like, he's not a comic actor either, but like I think he can play some of that like kind of deadpan better than Tyrese kind of being kind of a comedic foil in a way where like I think even though I don't like Too Fast or Too Furious, I find Tyrese funnier in that movie because there's no self-awareness in that film.
Yeah.
John Singleton's movie is playing it completely straight, even though again it's a terrible film.
Played straight, but to 20 out of 10, right? That's what I want. I don't want the winks, and I don't want the kind of, we understand it's silly. Like when Letty like lands on a car, like I love the physics in that universe where if you land on a car, you're good. It's like a mattress. like that's the type of ridiculousness I want, where no
or her coming back, right?
Or
like her surviving.
Or even Han coming back feels so flaccid, which is so unfortunate. Like I just like they blew their load with that in the trailer, and they maybe should have learned. I know it came out before, but like, even without spoiling any recent movie that came out, like even if everyone knows something's going to happen, maybe don't put it in the trailer, just because you lose that moment for the movie. Even if every single person who is looking forward to the movie knows it's going to be in there. Like, it's just, we all thought, oh, they're going to bring Han back, even if the casting got put out there or whatever. Is like, why wouldn't you save that moment for the theater? Like, I just don't get it. And I feel like that moment is completely lost in the movie, and it's very silly how they find him and stuff like that. It's just,
and again, retconning his
I'm fine with retconning, but just go all out of like, they time travel back and save him or something, like,
or that he has a robot hand and an eye patch now.
Yeah,
like that,
exactly.
Like just something really ridiculous. Like I
that's the type of self-aware that I can buy into, because then you go, okay, we understand what the audience loves about this franchise. Let's go deeper into that. Not tell them, we know that you guys think this is ridiculous. Let's show them more ridiculous stuff. But everyone in the universe still takes it seriously. Like if Han showed up with a robot eye and an arm, and everyone's like, holy shit, like I'd buy into that, because the characters buy into that and go, oh my God, Mr. Nobody pulled him out of the fucking wreck and built his cyborg man.
Which I could buy. It could be almost like the better version of Bloodshot.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, F9, an okay movie. I think the flashbacks are a lot of fun. Let's quickly, Eric, touch on, because we brought up Book of Boba Fett. So we will probably have a reaction to the first episode. We didn't get another Inside Baseball thing. We didn't get screeners because they're trying to, what they said, hide the secrets of the show. Which to me goes, ooh, it might not be good. That's the secret that they're trying to hide. Or there's like a big twist in the first episode or something like that. Although we did get the first couple episodes of Mandalorian, right? Which had the Baby Yoda reveal, or no?
I think so. But we've also gotten every Disney Plus series that has a connection to, whether it be Marvel or Star Wars that has some sort of spoiler element. And we're respectful of the embargo and not ruining it. And I mean, we'll even be talking about Cobra Kai and being respectful of season 4 and sort of dancing around certain plot reveals and things like that. So yeah, to your point, it almost feels like the show maybe isn't up to snuff compared to what the Mandalorian is, and maybe
And I don't
that's
want
kind
to,
of why.
because we have no idea.
No, this
Like
is
a
all
lot of times,
speculative.
because a lot of times, it might just be that, but they usually can hold us under an embargo unless they're really, maybe they're worried because of leaks and other things that they don't want, it will get out. Even if you show it to critics early, we've seen it with Spider-Man, we've seen it with time and time again, Eternals, other Marvel stuff,
Well,
other Star
any
Wars
of the
stuff.
series, right? Like if you go on social media after the series has been
It's going to
posted, a
be
new
out there.
episode
Yeah.
within the first hour and a half, 2 hours, you're going to have like Twitter exploding with
And maybe,
spoilers.
so I'm hoping it's less of a quality thing and more of whatever they're trying to hide is such an integral plot point of the show that you couldn't review it without talking about it. So they went, okay, well, we don't want this to get out before, the general audience gets to see it. So let's just not give it to anyone. And that's interesting. So I'm excited. It's tonight. Whether it's 3 a.m. for us tonight or I wake up early tomorrow morning and
Or
watch it,
12
we'll
a.m.
see. In West Coast
yes, yeah.
time. It's just, I feel like the hype level is just, and whether that's we've just had such a so many Marvel shows this year and different Disney things that
Well, also with Star Wars, right? Like I feel like Star Wars, like with the exception
we had
of
Visions this year.
but with the exception of the Mandalorian, I think Star Wars is at that point still where it's in a kind of resting phase,
yeah.
and transition where the future of that franchise is still somewhat undetermined.
Yeah,
And
it's obviously hasn't, the mass success that the MCU has had. The Star Wars universe has not had that same kind of, it's fumbled a little bit, to be completely honest. Like, yeah, people loved the Mandalorian season, 1 and 2, I think, and 2 even more than 1. But obviously the sequel, the Abrams sequel movies and Ryan Johnson's movie, Divisive, and Solo, and there are rumors that Solo might tie into this Boba Fett series, which might be the thing that they're hiding. But like, I don't know. Like, I love Star Wars. I know you're a big Star Wars guy too, Eric. I think Visions was great earlier this year, but is something that I don't think that many people watched, and feels like that the animated Star Wars content always feels like just secondary content. Like, you don't need to watch it, but it's there if you like it. It's almost like expanded universe stuff. So like, but the future of the live action stuff is really interesting, and it almost looks like it will be on Disney Plus. Like, the future of Star Wars looks like it's on Disney Plus, at least for the foreseeable future, because like, we don't know what the next live action movie is going to be. We thought it was going to be the
Red Squadron, the Patty Jenkins series, and then
but
you
that
had
looks like it's
Taika
canned.
Waititi
Yeah.
developing his film, and then there was even talk of
Kevin Feige and Chloe Zhao being rumored for that.
Yeah,
so.
and then you have the series, like the next kind of, I guess, big series would be the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, and then also the one with Diego Luna as well, and then you even have things like the series created by the sort of series or showrunner of Russian Dolls,
the Acolyte.
The Acolyte. Yeah, so it kind of feels like right now they're in this standstill when it comes to their features, because it's like, do you start a new franchise, and what does that mean? Because like, look at like what Kathleen Kennedy and J.J. Abrams kind of had to do with post The Last Jedi, and what Star Wars has become as well. I mean, Star Wars always had a very passionate fan base, but it has now become very toxic in how there's this entitlement where the fans feel like they're in complete control of it and they should dictate how a series should go. And The Last Jedi kind of having that very polarizing response of, some people loved it like we did, where it was trying to do something new within sort of the framework of something that is so well known and established. But then you had people that didn't like that because it wasn't quote unquote Star Wars and it was too woke or whatever. And then, you had J.J. Abrams come back, and that, The Rise of Skywalker regresses and kind of felt so shoddy in its
Yeah.
writing and rushed.
I'm weirdly in the camp that likes all 3 of the sequel movies, but I'll be very curious, and I know I'm rare. I'm like a unicorn when it comes to someone who actually just enjoyed all 3 of them for like
The Emperor has returned.
that's really bad. I don't disagree with any of that.
I like The Rise of Skywalker. I don't dislike it, but I do
Yeah.
feel that there's a lot of stuff in there that's very
It's just messy as
sloppy
hell.
and
Yeah.
and
It's
if
so
they had
messy
taken a
and
little
just-
bit more time, and I know
I just
Carrie
think they
Fisher
didn't know
passing
exactly
away-
what they wanted to do with those 3 sequel movies, right? Like I feel like you had, I don't know, such a
I think they had an
promising
idea.
start.
I think there was this idea of where they were going, but I think The Last Jedi threw things off because even again, Rian Johnson was another guy who was going to develop his
and
own
that looks like it
trilogy
just
of
kind of
films.
faded away as well, right? And like
And now he's put his focus on the Knives
Out. Yeah.
movies. So
I don't know, dude. Yeah, like I love Star Wars. I'm excited for Boba Fett. But my hype level is at like a we'll see. I got to see first.
it's at a simmering 6.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm looking forward to it, but I'm not like holy shit, Boba Fett is tomorrow. Even though like new Star Wars content, like we should be at an excitement level that's like up there.
It's more like, oh, Boba Fett's tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Not like
Boba
holy
Fett.
shit.
Boba Fett, where?
And even the Marvel show. So moving over to that, like, okay, that ends the Book of Boba Fett segment.
And that
but
ends that chapter.
so talking about the Marvel stuff, like we're at a little bit of a, which I think is a good thing, a break in Marvel stuff because like we just got Spider-Man No Way Home, which I think was such a high and like such the culmination. You check out both our spoiler cast and our review. We go really into detail about how it's a celebration of that character, of Marvel movies, of superhero movies, of like
Peter, it's me, Flint Marco.
I think it's very intentional that they were like, hey, let's leave a little bit of distance between Spider-Man and the next Marvel thing. Because like, you know, we had a weird gap in 2020 because of the flux of theatrical and stuff like that. We had so many Marvel shows this year. And then we got so many Marvel movies as well that like you had Black Widow, Shang-Chi, Eternals, Spider-Man, 4 Marvel Studios movies. And then you had WandaVision, Loki, Falcon Winter Soldier, What If, Hawkeye. Am I missing? No, that's it. Right. That like we've had so much this year that I'm almost like, okay, you know what? I'm cool to wait until Doctor Strange to get any more. I'm sure we'll get a Disney Plus series that's probably premiering. What do you think? February, March?
There
maybe?
has there been any announcements?
Nothing announced yet,
Okay.
but Ms. Marvel could come. You could see like, cause that was supposed to be this year. Remember?
Yeah. Moon Knight, She-Hulk.
Moon Knight. Yeah. It could be early
Secret
next
Invasion,
year.
I think is going to be 2023.
Yeah. Or late 2022. So do you think we get something before? So we just finished Hawkeye. Quick impressions. I think we're both kind of, I've softened on it. I still like it quite a bit, mostly because I think Haley Steinfeld is so great and Florence Pugh is great. And but I think like I started to kind of, I think it's in that Falcon and Winter Soldier area of like, you know what, I liked it. I just don't really think it nailed everything, and it got a little bit messy at the end and felt rushed. Where I feel weird that these Marvel shows have more runtime than most of the movies, but weirdly feel like they don't know what to do with it. And
They're mostly filler, or they're like the ongoing running sort of formula of this series of Hawkeye almost felt like in the last 3 or 4 episodes you were getting like, you know, cliffhangers where they're introducing a new character, and that was kind of like the big deal. Well, even at the end of the second episode with Echo, right? Like it was almost like at the
but
end
then
of
you had
every
too
episode,
much where you didn't know how to kind of tie all those loose ends up or what to do, and really it just felt like more setup.
Yeah.
And then you, without spoiling anything for people who might not have watched it yet, like they introduce a character in the second last episode, then that feels really rushed in the last episode. And then what they do with that character, I'm like, I know that's not what you're doing, but not everyone will know that. So it feels really weird to just like that's how you deal with that, even though you know that person is probably coming back for another series that's coming. It's just like, it just felt really sloppy a little bit, like, or like it felt rewritten, like Falcon and Winter Soldier did, where they like had other stuff, or even that character that I'm mentioning um feels like they probably weren't even part of the show originally, but then they put them in and then they just wanted them as setup. I don't know, man, but like
And some
I
of the
liked
action
it.
scenes too. I think
Yeah.
some of the action is creative, and then there are other moments where it is a little bit inconsistent with both the budget of the series and just sort of who is directing it. I as much as I didn't like or love the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I think the opening sort of action sequence in that is far better than anything that was in Hawkeye, with the exception of maybe just how sort of that
Yeah.
one car chase was
Yeah.
basically sort of constructed. But you're
Yeah.
watching it and you can kind of tell like how, again, I don't like doing this because I feel like it's cheap, but like how digital it is at times. And
Yeah.
when you're
Yeah.
watching it, you're just kind of like, it cheapens the experience, because it does like, part of it is like, okay, well, this is a sort of street level
Yeah.
storyline that isn't about the world ending
And
or
I
what
like
have you.
that
I
of
do
it.
too, but I don't think it necessarily, hits the bullseye in that regard either.
Even when it comes to the villain, like having, the man behind the curtain again, it was this person all along in the last episode, just doesn't feel like it. The tracksuit Dracula or Mafia in this, like, they just feel like generic henchmen. And then, with other reveals and things like that, like, they save so many twists and reveals for the last episodes of these shows that I feel like you don't have enough to kind of, then pay off those reveals. Like, you almost need to reveal them earlier so you can actually deal with it a little bit, rather than trying to wrap everything up in one episode.
And to your point,
Um,
I think a lot of this show, this series, is all set up. Like, it's all set up for a series we know is
Echo, or
coming,
yeah.
and characters we know that will carry on in
And that's what most of
other
these Marvel
series or
shows.
films.
I still think they're trying to figure out the Marvel series, because I really did love WandaVision and
Yeah.
Loki, just because I feel like they were the most creative and different than what you were able to do in movies. And then when you see something like Falcon and Winter Soldier and Hawkeye that feel very much like tried and true Marvel Studios action movies, um, they just feel a little bit underwhelming, because they do feel like what you're saying, where they're just a tee up for the future rather than being its own thing, where Loki and WandaVision are that as well. But like, I feel like the sitcom, setup of WandaVision was so creative and interesting and visually interesting that has been my favorite thing. And it started off so strong. And then Loki, with the time travel elements and the TVA and the production design there, and like, I really loved everything in that series. And like, I really do love Kate Bishop, and I love Yelena, and I'm excited to see what their futures are in the MCU. But even reading that Matt Fraction, David Aja comic in the summer, that is so stylish, and so it takes so many interesting risks and um, artistic risks, and it's colorful and funny. And like, I didn't see a lot of that in the show. Like, I saw that in the back and forth between Kate and Clint, but I never got that really kind of interesting visual style that you get in the comics. And with using Lucky the pizza dog, like, there's a whole comic where it just follows Lucky, and like really weird kind of interesting things like that, or visual cues and stuff like that. Like, it just ran. I feel like I'm more negative on it than I actually am, because I did pretty much enjoy it all the way through, and I still like it more than some of the lower tier Marvel stuff. Like, but I still kind of feel like it falls in the middle somewhere. And then What If's a completely other thing, where
Well, it's
it just
anthology, right?
it
Where
just
I
hit
think
or
that
miss
kind
each
of,
episode, right?
yeah.
So it's interesting. The
And
Marvel
to your
Studios
point,
shows.
I think an important thing to mention as well, you look at WandaVision and Loki, I think you can do more with those characters and sort of expanding their sort of meaning and understanding within the MCU than you can with Hawkeye and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I think those characters are a little bit harder to kind of, develop into fully fledged sort of, individuals and not. I mean, again, like I understand Iron Man was a C-level character and what have you, but I just feel that there are certain limitations with some of these like B and C tier characters that if you put them in their own series, it just kind of feels more like a stepping stone
Oh
to
yeah, it was to
another
get
movie or another
Falcon to Captain
series.
America. It was to get Kate Bishop to be the Hawkeye that we're gonna see moving forward. Like, it's closure for Black Widow, because we never really got that at the end of Endgame. Like, I get all that stuff. It's like, oh, let's bring in characters from other series or shows to set them up how they work in this universe and stuff like that. Like, it again, I still think they're figuring it all out, and I'll always be excited for the next Marvel series, because I think overall, um, it's great additional stuff for people who are really big fans of this universe. Like, I don't know if any of it is like required viewing when it comes to like the MCU. Personally, I would say like WandaVision and Loki, those two series we mentioned, like do feel like that. And I'm very excited for Kang the Conqueror and like Jonathan Majors and stuff like that. Like, and even Wanda being in Multiverse of Madness. Like, but I'm intrigued. Like, I think the thing I'm most excited for, because I think I'm running off the Spider-Man high, is that animated Spider-Man series freshman year. And like, my theories are going wild now too. I'm like, does freshman
Your
year
Spidey sense
mean
is tingling.
is like, I know they've said it's an origin story, but I'm like, could it be freshman year of college? Like, is like, I doubt it. Like, I feel like they'd keep that live action, like, to continue. But I'm like, how much story do you have to tell from Peter's origin? Like, we got him, I think, pretty soon after, Tony Stark saw him like doing friendly neighborhood Spider-Man stuff in that old costume, right? Like, how much origin do we have? We have 1 year of school essentially, right? Or one that he was,
But it doesn't have to be origin at this point. Like, it can just
yeah,
be sort of almost episodic in a film way,
yeah,
where it's just, hanging out with Spider-Man for a bit, him fighting a villain that either has been established in the franchise or
yeah,
bringing in someone new. Or you can just, again, like, I think at this point where that series is going, it's just a way to kind of maybe even bring in other characters that have been hinted at, or
yeah,
based on like the response that Spider-Verse has gotten. I mean, I'm sure like I'll be really interested to see how Spider-Verse part 1 or Across the Spider-Verse part 1 maybe influences the next trilogy of live action Spider-Man movies, because I could see them doing something similar where you have Tom Holland's Peter Parker / Spider-Man getting sucked into the multiverse in some way or another and going from various versions, like what is being hinted at in Across the Spider-Verse.
yeah. I think I could even see Tom Holland showing up in part 2 of that movie, or part 1. But like, it'll be interesting where they leave that character, which I don't want to say, but like, I'm just very intrigued. Freshman year, I just love Spider-Man animated shows too, because it reminds me of that 90s one, and they've done so many different versions, some better than others, but like, an animated Marvel Studios Spider-Man show sounds really fun to me. So I think that's like the one thing that I'm like really, really looking forward to. I don't know when we'll get it. It'll probably be 2023, but intrigued about the future there on Disney Plus too. I think, Eric, you saying Across the Spider-Verse is a good segue for our big topic of the show, which is the Untitled, which everyone's been looking forward to it, because like we said, we do it every year. Everyone's like, man, I got to see what Matt and Eric are saying the most anticipated movies of next year. Because
Everyone? Who is
yeah.
this everyone? Putting that in the
Because
show notes right now.
yeah, everyone is excited for Matt and Eric. We'll cover trailers and stuff as I think we talk about some of these movies, instead of doing a full trailer segment, because some of them we do have trailers for.
Oh, I will say this though as well with the Marvel stuff. Like you said that like it's good that we have a break, but I laugh that we're not even acknowledging Morbius.
Yeah, which I guess you're making a good point, that because of Vulture showing up, which I think that's what I'm most intrigued by. And then like, and even some of the stuff of seeing like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man on the wall that says murderer, and then having Vulture show up in the trailer, I'm like, did Morbius's universe get all fucked up by Doctor Strange's spell? Is that what's happening there? Like,
or does this
or
take place
in
in
the
Sam Raimi's universe?
and then Vulture exists, because I guess some characters could exist in both, right? Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a different actor as that villain or something like that.
But that's also the funny thing about both Morbius and the Flash movie coming out, is that both of those movies I have really no interest in, with the exception of Michael Keaton.
Yeah, which is why you're looking forward to it, right?
Yeah,
because I can't believe Morbius, spoilers, it will not show up in our most anticipated of 2022.
Shocker.
But we're getting, Morbius, I thought was going to be the first quote unquote big movie, but I forgot about Scream. Weird time for Scream to come out, but like, which also doesn't show up on our list just because it's too early. I am very looking forward to Scream, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, no mention of Morbius anywhere in I don't really count that.
Right, but it still has. I mean, like, I wouldn't be surprised if there's going to be something that adds to the conversation afterwards, whether it's a post-credit scene in it, or
it has to add to that conversation, right? Because again, not a spoiler for No Way Home, but Vulture is nowhere to be found, right? Like, we just assume he's still in prison, but he's not in the movies.
And then also thinking, like, Mahershala Ali has been cast as Blade, and in the 90s animated series, the big component there with the story thread is that Morbius and Blade have always kind of been connected, because Blade, comes to New York to track down Morbius in that 90s animated series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see, man. We don't have to wait long.
I actually kind of liked Morbius, the character, in the 90s series. I've got nothing against the character per se. I just don't think
I don't think they need
hate Jared Leto,
and
individually you don't need it.
No, I'd prefer these to be Spider-Man villains, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Eric, let's look back. Let's go back. It's last December. The world is on fire, just like it is right now. And we make our most anticipated films of 2021 list. We had a lot of carryover from 2020 because of everything. No movies came out basically for the second half of the year.
And one that's 3 years running consecutively.
And we will have one that is on a couple of them. Some got bumped off, so they were most anticipated this year, but we have other movies that kind of took their spot for 2022. But I want to quickly, before we get into the most anticipated movies of 2022, I want to look back at what we had on our list in 2021 and how we feel about that list. We don't necessarily have to rank them. We probably will put up a ranking on Letterboxd, but like, I will say, weirdly, there's one movie on here that I didn't even end up seeing just because it got lost in the shuffle of things, and probably because of the reaction was mixed on it and stuff too. But let's go through. We've already talked about one of them, and we've talked about a couple of them at length already in this show, but we'll go over it as a whole and see kind of, were we right of being excited about these movies, or were we wrong? So our most anticipated films of 2021, what we had on our list last year, we had T10, Annette, Candyman, The Card Counter, Last Night in Soho, Dune, No Time to Die, The Eternals, French Dispatch, Benedetta, The Green Knight, F9, Blonde, The Northman, Spiral, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, 3,000 Years of Longing, Apollo 10.5, A Space Age Childhood, False Positive, Licorice Pizza, and Triangle of Sadness.
There's a couple on there.
So interesting stuff here. So Triangle of Sadness, Apollo 10.5, 3,000 Years of Longing, Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, The Northman, and Blonde all did not make it this year. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 films out of our 21 that did not make this year. So we took some gambles going, we think these movies are coming this year, or they were rumored to be coming this year, but they ended up getting pushed. Blonde now for the third year in a row, getting pushed to the next year. So that's the first step of this list, and you'll see if they make our 2022 list. So those get kind of wiped out. Yeah, there's a few here. that did not live up to the hype. I think F9, we just talked about, is one of those movies that kind of didn't completely land for us. The Eternals, I think, is a big one that, we were like, oh, Chloe Zhao doing a Marvel movie. Those are two things that I really enjoy. Those coming together should work really, really well. It unfortunately did not. I think last year's Spiral from the Book of Saw was my kind of meme pick of like a very matte pick that has no business being with these other movies, but I'm going to put it on anyway. With our reviews, it ended up averaging out being, you gave it a 2, I gave it a 4. So it ends up being a 3 on our list. So, I think it pretty much landed how we expected it to land.
I give it a 2.5. I think
Oh,
it was
2.5.
I think
Okay.
it was the best Saw movie made.
Oh, I think that's why I lean towards a 3 instead. So there you go. That actually worked out in our favor. I would say Dune was probably our biggest disappointment, right? Like that was a no-brainer for being on our list for most anticipated. And I think, again, notoriously was one of our biggest disappointments of this year. Annette being another one that I liked, but was a big disappointment for you. I think Candyman, again, I liked, but big disappointment for you. Benedetta, another one that I think we were both kind of mixed on. Like you liked it a little bit less than I did, but the more I've sat on it, the more I'm just kind of indifferent and actually don't really care for the movie that much. French Dispatch, I think both of us didn't hate it, but felt like, again, anthology, like some sequences worked better than others, but as a whole package, it just kind of didn't land. Last Night in Soho, I think we both liked but didn't love. Thought it kind of fell apart in that last act and didn't really stick the landing, but the style and music and performances were really, really great. Card Counters, one that I still haven't seen. I do want to watch it. I have a screener and I've been meaning to. I just haven't gotten around to it.
It's good, not great, but I will say this: the longer there, like Oscar Isaac is amazing in that film. Like there are scenes in that movie where, like, if it wasn't Paul Schrader, and based on how Paul Schrader is online, I think that he would be someone in the Oscar conversation. Oscar Isaac, that performance is just so good, in the same way that Ethan Hawke is amazing. But I just feel First Reformed was such a stronger representation of what Paul Schrader, the best of what Paul Schrader is, in terms of like the man in the room writing something before sort of like that slow burn, ascension to something really dark, kind of exploding. And it does that here as well. And I like it, but it does it in a way that kind of feels a little bit like it is almost like a footnote after First Reform. But again, it's still a solid character study, and I think Oscar Isaac is amazing in the film.
Yeah. T10, we both really enjoyed out of TIFF. You a little bit more than me, but I still really dig it. What else am I missing here? That I think that pretty much covered. Green Knight, we both really, really liked. Licorice Pizza, you loved. I really liked it. With some concessions, but still think it's a very well made movie. And that's kind of rounds out the list. So I think our batting average here, like what we really liked or loved: Licorice Pizza, Green Knight, No Time to Die, I would put on that of living up to our expectations of being really good, and T10. The rest, kind of a mixed bag, right? Like,
well, especially like I would say just even disappointing. Like the idea of Denis Villeneuve striking out the way he did. I mean, that's something we didn't even talk about, is that Jean-Marc Vallée passed away,
actually,
and
I meant to bring that up, but we had
we can. I think maybe we can talk about it more on the year in review episode, but
as a big moment that happened this year, right at the tail end there, Man, that caught me off guard, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I texted you that night and when you were probably not feeling great.
I was watching Drive My Car, which is also weirdly, like, it was just weird watching something that was about, closure and remorse and sort of like the idea of like trying to find or trying to articulate what that all means. And then, when I got your text, I read it to Kyle, and Kyle and I were just like,
It was one of those things where I had to do a double take. Like the Chadwick Boseman thing was probably the last time, where I was like really like when you're just not expecting something at all. Yeah, just a huge bummer. Just really, really sad. But we will
and a
talk about
guy,
it more. Yeah.
yeah, and a guy like who just really, was only just getting started within sort of the Hollywood system, and like right now, if people living in Canada, you can rent or buy his amazing Jean-Marc Vallée's amazing coming of age movie set in Montreal, Crazy, which got a restored, remastered version of it that played theatrically, I think mostly in Quebec, but a little bit in other parts of Canada. But it is now available on iTunes in Canada, and it is a phenomenal movie. And then you look at that first season of Big Little Lies, you
Yeah.
look at Dallas Buyers Club. I know you did
Even
the
I
press junket
loved
for Wild. Yeah.
Yeah, I loved Wild. I know mixed from some people, but yeah, from that crew of French Canadian filmmakers that was starting to kind of break through in Hollywood and just absolutely crush it, and just really sad. I haven't heard more information. Not that I'm
In terms of
again
what
what
actually happened.
happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just really, really unfortunate stuff. But let's talk about it a little bit more in his career when we do the year in review. But
Yeah. But still worth mentioning, I think.
I absolutely agree, and thank you for bringing it up. But yeah, with Dune, I think again, I'm open to giving it a rewatch. You haven't seen it since we saw it at TIFF either, right?
No, I
Or have
haven't. And
you?
I think
Yeah,
I'll wait until part 2 comes out, because
yeah.
again, like we've talked about it, it's basically a prologue, and it's only this small fraction of an entire story
It's the
being
first
told.
act.
So how can you judge, like it's not a self-contained story, and I think that's why it fails, is because it in my opinion, and I think in yours, it doesn't stand alone. You can't basically say that this movie is its own film. It's a
No.
part of something, where like you could say like, okay, well, there are other movies like, Kill Bill Volume 1 or 2, or
Yeah.
things like that. Well,
But I put Kill Bill Volume 1 in the same boat, though, of that I would say it's the first half of one movie, and I consider those one film.
right. But I did find that with the Kill Bill movies, it was easier to look at Volume 1 as its own thing, and Volume
I
2
think
as
when
its
they
own
came
thing.
out, I think I was like that and others were, but as I've gone back and now that you have the full story and that it was intended as one film, and he even says, look at when the filmmaker goes, this is that blank film by, it's kind of pompous, but like by Tarantino, that like it is one movie. And I feel like Dune should be, in that same category of like, this is planned one of three. So like,
Right.
it's just,
But you
I
look at
need
Star
to,
Wars though, or Lord of the Rings. Like Lord of the Rings is like the obvious comparison
yeah,
as well, where like it feels like those Lord of the Rings movies, like each one, yes,
sure.
like you need all three to kind of complete the story, but each film kind of
Stands on
feels
their own.
self-contained.
Yes. Where I don't think that this did that. Like, that's why it was called part one and not Dune : whatever you wanted to call it. Right. Like, it's not, we made the same kind of in our review for people who didn't listen to it. I'm like, the analogy I said was like, yeah, it's a puzzle piece, but it's a complete puzzle that's part of a bigger puzzle. That's what it should be. Where this feels like literally you cut a puzzle into three and you only got the first third of the puzzle. It's like there's two different ways of doing it. And I just don't think it succeeds as singular film, but I am open to giving it another shot. So
Yeah.
I will give it another shot, and I will reevaluate it both before part 2 comes out and after part 2 comes out. So, but yeah, the list is overall, I feel like maybe we missed more than we hit, and I don't know whether that's saying like expectations play into these things, or it just didn't work out for a lot of the stuff we were excited for. And I don't even think any of it is, I don't think we swung and missed by like a lot, because I think even the stuff that we didn't care for, I think is the best word for it, like Eternals, Dispatch, Annette, Candyman to an extent for you. I mean, I really liked Candyman, even though I've softened on it a
Well, it's
bit.
like My Love for T10 versus you
Yeah.
admiring, or Licorice Pizza, right?
Yeah.
But then even like False Positive, which is not very good.
There's another one, yeah.
But then also you have to consider, okay, well, not everything on our list was even released, and there's 6 films that weren't. So, that kind of also reduces that sort of average a little bit, and you have to kind of take that into consideration when looking at like, that final percentage or how we did overall, because we were thinking like all these movies would be released. And there's obviously some situations where things get delayed for obvious reasons, but there were more movies that were delayed partly because we're still living in a pandemic.
Yeah.
And that's understandable.
You want to get into what we're going to put on the list this year?
Oh, yeah.
Let's do it. Okay, so Eric and I spent a good hour and a half before the show putting together what our 22 films, so we get an extra slot this year, and we're going to probably keep doing that just because that's where I like the symmetry of that for the year that this is coming out. So to kick it off, like these are in no particular order. They're kind of by release date, but then we just threw different things in there to try to make this list of 22 films. We'll start with honorable mentions, and you'll see a few things that were on our list last year are no longer on the list this year. They got bumped off for other movies and then fall in our honorable mentions. Eric, do you just want me to go through the honorable mentions and kind of talk about it? So on our honorable mentions, we have The Eternal Daughter, Mission Impossible 7, 3,000 Years of Longing, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Lightyear, The Fabelmans, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Babylon, Peter Pan and Wendy, Next Goal Wins, Knives Out 2, The Gray Man, Infinity Pool, Argyle, Kimmy, She Said, Spaceman, Asteroid City, and Apollo 10.5, A Space Age Childhood. So a few things on here to kick it off. You'll see that Apollo 10.5 got bumped off, as well as 3,000 Years of Longing got bumped off the list that were on our most anticipated of last year. But when we were putting this together, we just decided, you know what, we're still excited for those movies. We want to give them an honorable mention. I think this list of honorable mentions is also looks like a banger list of most anticipated movies.
It does.
So that's, I think, like what excites me. And I feel like we'll talk about the best movies of this year on next week's show. But I feel like it was an underrated year for movies where, we talked about how our most anticipated list didn't necessarily work out, but I'm struggling trying to find, a top 25 of the year. Not struggling to find, sorry, that was weird wording. I mean, I'm struggling to only have 25 movies that I want to put on that list. I found that we had a lot of really, really good movies this year that kind of went under the radar. So this list looks like a great list of movies, even not that stuff that didn't make our top 22. So like things like Mission Impossible 7, which was a last minute kind of, we couldn't fit it on the list. And I think that's because it's the 7th movie in a franchise. And we're like, yeah, we're really, really excited for it. Eric, you made a great point of being like, can you even top Fallout? Like I'm hope they can, and they only have shown that they keep getting crazier and more entertaining. Something like Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, talking about big movies. Like I'm not the biggest fan of the Doctor Strange character, which is, I think, why you'll see a couple other superhero movies make the cut and not Doctor Strange, even though I think that movie has the potential to be something massive. Spielberg's The Fabelmans, like it's Steven Spielberg. He's a legend. Like usually his movies would be like an automatic, you got to put it on the list. But I think there's some other filmmakers that we just are really, really pumped for. Even someone like, Babylon from Damien Chazelle. Chazelle's been hit or miss for me. I love La La Land, didn't love First Man. I think there's just certain Peter Pan and Wendy from David Lowery, who's one of my favorite filmmakers. So Taika Waititi has 2 movies, so we only put one Taika Waititi movie on there, not the other one. Anything else you want to point out here? We have, The Gray Man, which is from the Russo brothers, which we were like, we hated Cherry, even though I love their MCU stuff. So I can't put that on the list for that. The Wes Anderson, we just talked about our reaction to his last movie, which I think maybe went, okay, maybe we don't need to put the next Wes Anderson movie on the list. Lightyear, Pixar, you'll see a different Pixar movie pop up on our list. So we kind of just wanted, representation stuff of being like, well, let's just put one Pixar movie on the list. And like Lightyear, I'm very, very excited for Lightyear, but it feels like maybe a bit more conventional than some of their other stuff. Anything else you wanted to point out from that?
Yeah, I think with the Eternal Daughter, Joanna Hogg has made two of the best movies in the last couple of years with The Souvenir Part 1 and 2. And I think that, we were talking about like Dune not being able to stand on its own. I think The Souvenir Part 2, even if you haven't seen Part 1, is even better than the first half, but also elevates the first movie quite a bit. And so for that, I'm really excited to see The Eternal Daughter and her working with Tilda Swinton once again. And it's that kind of cautious optimism where it's a project that I believe shot sort of right after or during The Souvenir Part 2, or came together around that time. So whether or not that actually sort of is something more than just maybe like something that's a little bit more intimate and smaller, I'm very excited to check that out. With the Daniels coming back with Michelle Yeoh, I think that's going to be exciting with Everywhere, All the Time. And so like, with that, you have something really exciting there, and it's an earlier release. I think that's something as well that kind of weighed on our minds, where you have these earlier films in the year, and it's like, how many movies do you want to put out that or put on a list that are from January to, like, say April or May, and then like how much do you want to put on the list that is sort of relatively unknown in terms of when its release date is going to be sort of on there, but also just thinking about like, okay, well, you want to have as much as you can that you don't know anything about, because you want to take more of a risk when it comes to picking stuff that is more of a gamble. As Matt chooses,
I'm back. I got a granola bar.
Yeah.
When I was up. Thanks for vamping. Okay, I swallowed. Yeah, I agree with everything you were just saying. So let's get into this year's list. Do you want me to just go through it all? We can talk about it? Or do
Yeah,
you want
sure.
to go?
Yeah, just read through it, then we can kind of just talk about it.
So here are the 22 movies that we are really pumped for, or are most anticipated of next year. For the third year in a row, Blonde. Then we have The Northman, Bones and All, White Noise, Triangle of Sadness, Jackass Forever, The Batman, Thor Love and Thunder, Nope, Don't Worry Darling, Women Talking, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1. Choked up. So excited. Turning Red, Super Mario Brothers, Poor Things, The Killer, Killers of the Flower Moon, The Whale, Men, Disappointment Boulevard, The Zone of Interest, and Crimes of the Future. Eric, kick it off. What do you think of the list as a whole? Or what movies did you want to bring
I
up?
think Super Mario Brothers kind of, says it all with putting that
That's
on
my
list.
spiral of this year.
Yes.
Just so. I had to get, there's one movie every year where I'm like, this has no business. I mean, some people it is genuinely on my most anticipated list, just because like I don't even like Illumination, like the studio, for the most part, but I hate the Minions. But I am weirdly, like, morbidly curious about Super Mario Brothers, so I had to it feels weird, like, bumping, something like any of those movies we brought up in the honorable mentions for Super Mario Brothers, but it is that one pick where I'm like, I have to put this on our official stamp of approval list just to see how it ends up.
Yeah, I think that, like, you know, you have to have that balance of both kind of like a curated personality behind, you know, the list kind of peeking through, and that, you know, perfectly represents, as you mentioned, you know, your spiral choice of the year. And also just the controversy behind it of Italian American actor Chris Pratt cast as Mario.
I can't stop my excitement for it. What are you pumped for?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because, like, again,
Obviously, all of it, but
yeah. But it's interesting because we just got the trailer for The Northman, and even though I like the trailer and I've watched it a few times, and I really loved The Witch, and you know, I respected The Lighthouse more than I loved it from a technical point of view, I was surprised by how kind of conventional the trailer for The Northman was. And again, it's just a trailer, it's marketing, obviously trying to get as many people into the theater as possible, but it did look like a riff on The Revenant, and not as maybe sort of weird or surreal as I was thinking a Robert
that one Willem
Eggers.
Dafoe scene is pretty dope, though.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I think, you know, Willem Dafoe also appears or is going to be in the Yorgos Lanthimos movie, Poor Things, which I think is going to be another one of those movies where, like, at the end of the year, I mean, that idea of like taking the kind of Frankenstein story and doing something really warped and twisted with it, will be exciting. But yeah, just watching that trailer, I was like, oh, this is more conventional than I was thinking it would be. But again, it's only representative of the marketing. It's not necessarily
Yeah,
the film
I think the
itself.
marketing has to be a little bit more conventional, but I still think that trailer rips, and I'm very excited for it. But I thought all of Eggers' trailers have been, pretty good. But yeah, Northman, I'm all in for. Blonde being the third year, we couldn't bump it off because it's like, well, it was there the last 2 years. It's got to come out this year, and all the rumors we've heard about it being like uh
NC-17 rated, and
yeah,
Andrew Dominic kind of fighting with
like an art
Netflix.
house movie.
Yeah, and you know, this kind of being a big movie for Ana de Armas, who's playing Marilyn Monroe, and also just that being fascinating because she is a Cuban American actor, and thinking like, okay, like, what kind of movie is this going to be? Is this going to be a traditional biopic, or is this going to be something that's a little bit more unconventional in terms of its structure? Knowing, you know, Andrew Dominic's other movies like The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, or Chopper, or Killing Them Softly, it probably is going to go in a direction that is very unexpected.
Yeah, everything we've heard was that he showed it to Netflix and they were like, "What the fuck is this?" So that makes me excited. I agree with you on Northman, Bones and All, which is the cannibal movie from
Luca Guadagnino.
yeah, which very intriguing. We got White Noise on there, which is the Noah Baumbach movie. Is that
Yes,
that
so
one? Yeah,
Noah Baumbach, it's another Netflix film. It
yeah.
reunites him with Adam Driver and Greta Gerwig, and it's based on Don DeLillo's novel of the same name. And for people that love Don DeLillo, you'll probably remember that David Cronenberg adapted his Cosmopolis, which was kind of a middling movie, but at the same time something very unconventional. And so it'll be exciting to see what Baumbach does with DeLillo's work, and where that could possibly go, because Underworld's another one of his books that I know for a number of years you've had filmmakers trying to tackle as both a feature film and as a series. And that is another one that, you know, if White Noise is successful, maybe there'll be this renaissance period of Don DeLillo adaptations now, because I feel like Cosmopolis was that movie where it was like, you know, Cronenberg was tackling this idea of like this, you know, affluent sort of young guy who, you know, goes on this weird odyssey to get a haircut, and like that's literally the whole movie.
Love it.
But it didn't really work, but it was still fascinating. And speaking of Cronenberg, I think personally for myself, the film that I'm looking forward to the most is, you know, the director who, you know, when you talk about body horror, or the phrase being coined is Cronenbergian, is David Cronenberg returning, because his last movie was the very underwhelming Maps of the Stars, and him doing something that is kind of maybe more in his wheelhouse, again with Crimes of the Future, and, you know, bringing in people like Kristen Stewart and Viggo Mortensen, who's worked with him, you know, 3 times previously, and Leah Seydoux, and it being shot in Greece, but also including, again, sort of body horror elements. And also, you mentioned his son in the honorable mentions with Infinity Pool. We could get two Cronenberg movies in 1 year that are both being released by Neon in the US.
Love it. Yeah, seeing him return is so exciting. So I'm very excited for that too. Another one, Triangle of Sadness, is a carryover from this year, which is the Ruben Östlund movie about basically, I think, some people who are like shipwrecked on an island, right? And then like it has Harris Dickinson, who you just recently talked to him for the Kingsman, right?
And I
You brought
asked
this
him
up.
about this as well. So I asked him specifically, like, what can people expect from the Triangle of Sadness? And he was literally like, I have no idea. Like, literally, we were making this movie and it was all over the place, but exciting to do. And he said it's like, from the point of view of two models, that kind of like, this hierarchy on the ship, and sort of, like, who it sounded so out there. And from everything that even like Ruben Östlund has posted online, like, there was this behind the scenes footage of like projectile vomiting, where it was just like, okay, whatever this is going to be.
I always bring up that interview I did with him for Force Majeure, but he was one of my favorite people to talk to. He was just so nice and so enthusiastic. And I'll never forget asking him about the accordion like music that was in Force Majeure, and he's like, "You'll never believe what that is." He's like, and then he pulled up his phone and pulled out YouTube and like showed me that video of this kid playing that song on the accordion, and he's just like, "I just ripped that music and put it in the movie." I'm like, "What?" No, he's like, "No, it's literally the music from that YouTube video." And I'm like, "That is incredible."
And also,
And
he shoots everything, at least with Force Majeure, he shot everything in wide.
yeah,
And then in post-production, in the
the
editing
square is
room,
great too.
he zoomed in on things for close-ups and stuff like that. So I find that even really
Oh, like digital
fascinating.
zoom
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, that's interesting. And yeah, the square is great too. So like, I can't wait to see.
And it's got Woody Harrelson in it as well. So.
You love it. Um, into our bigger like Hollywood movies and stuff like that, we have Jackass Forever, which is, I think, another one of those picks like Super Mario Brothers, where I don't know if it'll show up on many people's most anticipated lists, but for Matt and Eric, it's got to be on there because like it's part nostalgia, part just like guilty pleasure, but not even guilty. I just like genuinely enjoy the Jackass movies. There's something like primal and
Visceral.
hilarious and visceral about just those movies, and like I think it's escapism at its finest, where it's just like, okay, and it was such like an important part of my like growing up. Jackass was like, I remember, not a great thing, but like making my own Jackass videos with my friends and stuff like that, which is definitely what you were not supposed to be doing. Meeting Johnny Knoxville at the premiere of Jackass 3 in Toronto, because I think that was like it was I remember one of the first like big events I went to as a quote unquote film critic. It was like when I was first starting out, because when did Jackass 3 come out?
Was
Like
it
2000.
2010 or 2011? I think it was the same year as Piranha 3D.
Yeah, something like that. But I remember getting invited to the Jackass 3 premiere, and the after party was at the Hard Rock, which is now a Shoppers Drug Mart on the corner of Yonge and
Makes
Dundas.
sense.
And so it's funny, whenever I'm up on that upper floor of that Shoppers Drug Mart, like buying a water or a cherry Coke or something, I'm like, I remember partying with Jeff Tremaine and Johnny Knoxville on this floor of this Shoppers Drug Mart, which was a Hard Rock, of them like he pulling out his credit card and buying like tequila shots for everyone, but making them squirt the lime or lemon in their eye instead of like sucking on the afterwards, and like just ridiculous. And I have these weird photos of like my old friend Ryan, like holding Johnny Knoxville like a baby. And like, it was just, he's genuinely like a lot of fun, and it seemed very like he just actually gives a shit about it. And they're so like, I can't believe that them at their age is doing this
That
stuff.
they're still
and, like,
doing this?
and I it's like, it's awful, but I'm like very excited to just go in. I hope at that time we can have like a jam-packed theater. And I don't even know if a press screening will do that movie justice, but
No,
might want to
but
go with
also,
like
I mean, like, it's like a Mission Impossible movie, because I think, like, the way that those movies are structured around
they have
sort
to
of
one up.
the stunts, yeah, like, it's fascinating to see, like, how extreme they'll go. But even the one, I think the most effective ones are the things like the paper cuts. I think those
Oh,
are the more sort
oh,
of cringy
the
moments than anything.
sweat
Yes.
milkshake and stuff
Oh
like
my,
that.
like that's worse than being sort of
Oh yeah,
catapulted or
that
like,
stuff is genuinely funny. Where the paper cut and the are just like holy, like visceral things that are just etched into my mind.
but I also think
Um,
that they've got those movies get better with, like, I think the third one is so well done. Like, that
it is,
movie
yeah.
is
And the best use of 3D,
yeah.
like I think, like
Yes,
in a
100%.
like in a long time. I remember that being like, oh shit, that's actually worth, like they shot it all with 3D cameras and like um
Giant 3D
yeah.
dildos coming at your face.
Let's go into the trio of superhero movies we put on the list. So we put on Matt Reeves' The Batman, which we did get another trailer for as well, like we did with the Northman. Thor Love and Thunder, Taika Waititi's follow-up to Thor Ragnarok, one of our favorite MCU movies, which is also going to include the Guardians of the Galaxy. And then Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1. And then you go, Matt, Eric, don't do this again. You put Dune Part 1 on there. And you said it was half of a movie. And here's the thing, everyone. Fuck you, one. Two, Spider-Verse, I think that was a shock during that trailer where we saw the Part 1. It had one movie for
But it
the
was up
setup
front, though,
already.
compared to
Yeah.
Dune, right? Where the Dune
Yeah.
trailers never had Dune Part 1
Part
come
1.
up.
They had it, they surprised you as the movie started. Um, I, yeah, Dune should have always been marketed as Dune Part 1. Um, and Spider-Man being split into two movies, like, again, I might be in the same boat where I might enjoy Part 1 of Spider-Man more than I enjoyed Part 1 of Dune at the time, because maybe my expectations are in check. But I might not. We'll see if it feels like a complete movie or if it feels like half of a movie, and we'll have to wait till Part 2 to get, like, much like Kill Bill, of the two parts of one movie. But Spider-Verse, the first one, is one of probably my favorite superhero movie, and just like one of my favorite animated movies and just movies in general, where that movie never gets old. Whenever it's on, I could watch the entire thing. And I think it's so funny and so clever and just like just been beautiful. The animation style that Sony has continued with movies like Mitchell's versus the Machines, which feels like we talked about 4 hours ago, but I think Sony has developed their own animation style and just it kicked it off with that movie, and I'm so excited for a follow-up. With Thor, yeah, again, I think the Thor movies really turned around with Ragnarok, and I just think Taika's so funny and bringing in the Guardians, and hopefully Korg has a bigger role, and having Christian Bale come into the MCU as a villain of Gore the God Butcher is like a lot of fun. So pumped for that. And then speaking of Christian Bale, going over to the Batman for a new version of Batman from Matt Reeves. Like, I think if you guys haven't watched Matt Reeves' Planet of the Apes movies because you're like, like, I feel like those movies, they made a good amount of money and they were big, but I still feel like they kind of go under the radar. Like, not a lot of people paid attention to them, and they are fucking awesome. They are
Well, that's
so
most of
good.
his career, though. I feel like Let Me In is actually a surprisingly good remake of
Yeah.
Let the Right One In, with both taking what kind of made that Swedish movie so singular within the horror genre and the vampire genre, but also doing its own thing. And then even with, Cloverfield, like Cloverfield, that first movie, I think gets taken for granted to a certain degree, and does things that obviously kind of brought back the found footage kind of franchise into the 2000s. And again, as just a monster movie, he understood what he was doing there. And
Yeah.
so, like, I'm very excited for whatever he does. And obviously he's a franchise guy, and as much as I like J.J. Abrams, I feel Matt Reeves is the more creative one of that group of
Absolutely.
guys. Where
I love
like,
Abrams too, but like,
but Abrams, you can tell, is more so like a really good producer.
he's the company man,
Yeah.
where Reeves feels like, and Reeves is to an extent as well, like you mentioned, like he is a franchise guy now, but I feel like, yeah, he does feel like he takes more artistic risks, or like he's making franchise filmmaking, but trying to do it in an artful way that still, like, there are some great shots, or Michael Giacchino's scores feel like inspired when he's working with Matt Reeves as well, like, which is something we talked about when we talked about Spider-Man, of like,
Well, War of the Planet of the Apes, that score is incredible.
and just there's some sequences in both of his Apes movies that, like, single take sequences, or just the emotion that you get from Caesar and the Apes, and just like the pacing of those movies and the action sequences are just like really, really fucking excellent. Like, War of the Planet of the Apes is a great, like, almost apocalyptic movie, and like they rule. And like you said, he's kind of feels like a super underrated filmmaker that, like, I feel like, people do know of him, and I think people are excited for the Batman because of him, but like, I still feel like there's a whole group of people that he's not like a household name, I don't think, like, to most.
Or he's not in that kind of upper echelon of, like, when you think of like great blockbuster filmmakers who are working today, like, he kind of rides that line between the artistic and commercial in such a manner where it's like he's this interesting hybrid. And like, when watching that, like, one car accident in Let Me In, and how that plays out,
and you
with
see
Richard
some of that
Jenkins
in the Batman
car.
trailer too.
Exactly. And like, those are the moments that set him apart from someone like, say, J.J. Abrams, who is a guy who, like, has a love of, filmmaking and the genre, and can make a really fun, entertaining movie, but he doesn't always necessarily build upon what he's sort of referencing, where it feels like Matt Reeves, like JJ, like with Super 8, for example, like, obviously he's taking a lot from Spielberg, who's obviously his biggest influence, but it doesn't feel like there's a lot there in his movies that define who J.J. Abrams is as an artistic,
other than slick, like,
yeah, and the lens flare thing. But the lens flare,
Sure.
like, even in, like, I mean, they're used in tons of movies, so it's not necessarily just his style.
Isn't
or
that
his
like
signature.
who's his cinematographer? Dan Mindell? Is that?
Yeah. But I mean, Dean Cundy was doing that in, like, John
Cundy.
Carpenter's.
Speaking of Cundy, he shot a
Thing.
bunch of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Fett. I don't know why I said it like that.
Yeah.
But that makes me excited. Like, something like Dean Cundy, who I feel like has just been, I remember screenshotting what he's been doing lately and going, what happened?
Well, he was at TIFF a few years ago doing, like, a workshop for cinematographers, and like, the last, I think, big movie he did, which was, I think, Jack and Jill, the Adam Sandler film. And then other than that, he's been doing, like, a lot of TV movies.
We're going on a tangent, everyone, but
commercials.
He did
and stuff like
Anastasia, Once Upon a Time, Home Again, Slamma Jamma.
Jeez.
The Girl in the Photographs, which you saw at TIFF.
Yeah, you walked out of that one.
I left, yeah. The last thing you would recognize from, like, a studio standpoint is Jack and Jill, you're right. And then The Spy Next Door. Man, what happened? The Holiday, I guess, the Nancy Meyers movie, and Garfield. Like, I don't know, but it's exciting.
He shaped so many of the films that we grew up with, like with Spielberg and Robert Zemeckis. And
we talked about Jurassic Park as well, right? I showed
Yeah.
you that I got that for Christmas, and like, Back to the Future, and like
Halloween.
Roadhouse, fucking Big Trouble in Little China, like Halloween, Season of the Witch, Halloween, right?
Yeah, The Thing.
Like, come on. And then, like, he went off of a cliff, like, after Looney Tunes Back in Action, or Garfield, I guess The Holiday. He went off a cliff. Like, he did Flubber, Parent Trap, What Women Want, Looney Tunes, Garfield, The Holiday, which I'll give him all that. You know what? Those are in the 2000s were a weird time, you know?
Yeah.
But then after The Holiday, I'm like, what? Why? Like, did he piss
somebody off? Like,
yeah, like, and then even on the TV front, like, He hasn't shot anything on TV since Scooby-Doo Curse of the Lake Monster in 2010 and Camp Rock, the Disney kid show or thing. And then now he's back for Book of Boba Fett, which is like, you could probably tell that that's a Jon Favreau, or I doubt Robert Rodriguez because he usually shoots his own stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know whether it's like a Jon Favreau going like, what the fuck's Dean Cundy been up to? And then going, you still want to do like, you want to do a Star War? And then he's like, yeah, sure. I'm sorry, just got to finish up Slamma Jamma and I'll come right over. And I'm like, what? Anyways, we got off on a tangent.
Like
there.
it's weird because like you can understand like someone like Wally Pfister kind of falling off the face of the earth after
because
Transcendence,
you put it in
right?
director's jail, which almost puts you in cinematographer's jail too.
Yeah, but the Dean Cundy thing is really fascinating because again, there's a guy who's like, and I don't think he's ever been nominated for an Oscar either, which I think is really weird. Or has he?
He was for Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Okay, but other than that,
that's the only movie, which is
so
wild.
Weird. Yeah.
Which is wild. Yeah, he must have either pissed someone off, or I'm trying to look like, what is something happen? I don't know. We're getting off on a tangent. The Batman looks great. The new trailer, I thought was a little bit more conventional. Like it was called The Bat and the Cat, which I thought was cool. Shout out to Matt Reeves. Also, why I love that guy is you can tell he really gives a fuck about presentation as well. Like
posts
putting
all his
his
stuff on Vimeo
and Vimeo in 4K, and he's like, this is the place you gotta watch it. And like, it seems like he would be a guy who would go to cinemas and yell at them if his movie wasn't projected properly. Not yell, but he'd be like, guys, this means a lot. Like, you need to make sure that this like looks really good. And that's what the attention to detail, things like that don't look that important to people, being like, oh, okay, he's telling you to watch the 4K trailer on Vimeo. I'm like, no, that's showing. And the David Fincher thing, even though Fincher can be like a controlling guy, but to bring everything full circle, when you talk about the packaging for his movies, that stuff to me is the attention to detail, that everything matters, you know, like I'm putting my life and soul into this movie. It's not just something I'm throwing out to the ether to a big studio, and it's going to come out and you're going to eat some popcorn and you're going to enjoy it. Like, this shit matters to me. I want you to see it in the best way possible, or I want the packaging to be the best way possible. And those are signs that someone like genuinely gives a shit. So that's what makes me really excited about whatever Matt Reeves does. Jordan Peele's Nope. We don't know much about it. We got that poster randomly.
I wanted to mention with the Batman as well.
Yeah,
what I thought was interesting is that it is going to be available on HBO Max in April.
45 days later, yeah.
So even though, you know, it is going to be exclusively playing, it's not going to be day and date like last year, you know, for people that maybe are still uncomfortable with going to the theater for the time being, it's not going to be too long afterwards. So I think that's kind of,
I think a 45-day window is perfect.
Yeah,
to be honest, if I can be completely honest with how theatrical presentation should go, I think Spider-Man has proved that people still do want to go to the movies for certain movies. And if it's the only way to see a movie, I think they will show up if it's something that they want to see. But then you're seeing things like The Matrix and The Kingsman underperform.
Or even Licorice Pizza, right?
Yeah, which they decided to kind of pull the wide release of Licorice Pizza and keep it limited for the time being until next year. So, you know, it's a weird time, but I think that 45-day window feels perfect. Like giving a month and a half for people to go see it exclusively in theaters. And then, you know, if you want to wait, you wait a month and a half and you watch it on streaming or you rent it. Jordan Peele's Nope. Don't know much about it, but the cast is great. The poster looks awesome.
IMAX too, right?
IMAX.
It was shot in IMAX, some of it.
Oh yeah, that's fucking exciting. Even if we were a little bit soft on his last movie, Us. I'm still, no matter what he does, I'll be excited for it. Don't Worry, Darling. We got that little tiny teaser clip like a few months ago, and that's been kind of the only thing we know about this. But Florence Pugh, Harry
One
Styles.
more thing on Nope.
Yeah, sure.
Van Hoytema is the cinematographer.
There you go.
Christopher
That's
Nolan.
awesome.
And speaking
Yeah.
of Let the Right One In, one of the
Yeah,
best working right now. So
yeah. Don't worry, Darling looks awesome. Olivia Wilde following up Booksmart with something that looks like a bit more of a thriller or like a psychological drama. Loved that little teaser that we got. Looks very stylish. Really, really looking forward to that. Eric, if you have anything, just chime in as I go through these. Women Talking, which is the Sarah Polley movie. Sounds really, really dope. Eric, you were talking about this before. It's about the Mennonite women. Sounds really intense, right? Like
yeah,
about
and Sarah Polley, I mean, I think is one of the
Mhm.
best Canadian filmmakers right now. And you look at movies like Stories We Tell and Away from Her and Take This Waltz, like they're very character sort of focused and plot second, and find sort of like details within her characters and storylines, whether it be very personal about her own family. I think Stories We Tell is one of the best documentaries in the last 15-20 years. I've always liked Sarah Polley's like Matt Reeves, where like it's like you don't necessarily think of her in like maybe the top tier of
Yeah.
great filmmakers, but she always delivers. She's always so
She
good
hasn't worked a lot lately, though, right?
as a filmmaker. No,
yeah, she's been
and
doing some TV stuff, or what has she been doing?
yeah, I think so. I think she did Alias Grace, which was
Right.
the Netflix series with Sarah Gadon and David Cronenberg. But yeah, she hasn't done like a feature in a while, even though she's been developing a couple of projects. And this is an all-star cast. You have Frances McDormand in the lead. You have two of the Dragon Tattoo stars in previous adaptations with Claire Foy and Rooney Mara. You have Jesse
Oh yeah.
Buckley. You have Ben Whishaw. Um, it's going to be one of those films that I think will probably end up premiering, at the fall festival season, most likely Toronto. And
Yeah.
it'll be really interesting to see if that is a film that will play during the award season. So
Sticking with Toronto, Domi Shi's Turning Red, which is the Pixar film that's coming out March.
yeah, it's one of
Something
those
early.
months.
It's the earlier Pixar movie.
I'll look it
It's
up
like,
right now.
Yeah, it's the spring Pixar movie, I believe. We had to put it on the list because I think each year you gotta have one Pixar movie that you're like super excited. I think both this year I'm very, very excited about, and it's honestly a toss-up between Lightyear and Turning Red for very different reasons. But I think why we lean towards Turning Red, obviously, Eric and I are from the GTA. Toronto is our home basically, and having a movie set in Toronto from Pixar I think is really, really exciting. And then it just seems really creative, and I love these original ideas. I think that's what Pixar shines at, honestly, right? Like I love some of their sequel stuff and them branching out and doing a sci-fi action movie with Lightyear with a really funny premise of the man, not the toy, of Buzz Lightyear. But Turning Red had to kind of lean towards that, I think, because of the Toronto element. And
Well,
just
also
it
Domi
looks,
Shi's short, right?
yeah,
Bao was such
Bao is great.
an impressive short film,
Yeah.
and so it kind of reminded me a little bit of like with Petite Mama, where there's so much story and context sort of whittled
In
down
a short
into this short
runtime.
movie,
Yeah.
but it gets across so much in the detail of it, and sort of again culturally speaking,
Yeah.
is incredible. So I think to your point, like when Pixar does something original and they land, you'll get a Soul or an Inside Out or the first Toy Story movie, and like or Ratatouille. Like those are the
Yeah.
movies that move us
The
the
originality.
most.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also just thinking as well, like with them using NSYNC in the trailers, and thinking of Red Rocket, Turning Red and Red Rocket. So
Turning Red Rocket, there's something there.
yeah.
Super Mario Brothers.
Or is it
already
Backstreet
mentioned.
Boys that was in the
That's Backstreet Boys,
but still in that same zone of boy bands from the late 90s,
bands,
early
yeah.
2000s.
90s boy bands, it all blends together.
Yeah.
There is still a Turning Red Rocket there somewhere.
Yeah.
We have Super Mario Brothers, which was my I begged and pleaded Eric to let me put it on the list, and he was like, "Yeah, sure." No.
I don't care.
It was the one thing where, it is a little bit of a meme pick for me, but it is genuine. Like, my first love was video games, even before movies. And I've talked about it a lot. I've tried to inject a lot of video game knowledge and stuff into these shows, whether it's reviewing The Last of Us like it was a feature, whether
Well, the
it's
Kingsman, right? Like that our review of the Kingsman.
yeah, the Kingsman being very video gamey, and just like trying to inject that wherever I can, and showing my love for video games and how it's kind of influenced my love of film, because like the games that I love the most, even though I played like 12 hours of NHL yesterday, is like are narrative focused games. And I feel like Mario Brothers was never a narrative focused game, but it's kind of where my love of like entertainment and stories to an extent, but like or interactive media and stuff like that began. And Mario is very, very special to me. The Super Mario Brothers movie is very special to me, like the one from the 90s, because like again, I think weirdly, like I don't know how many other people say like the Super Mario Brothers movie was one reason why they love film, but like it is one of the reasons that I love movies. Is like it's not a good movie, but it's really like a train wreck, but like it's such a train wreck. But when you're a kid and you see that movie and you love video games and you're seeing a Mario Brothers movie and you're seeing Yoshi and a Bob-omb and like and Princess Daisy, and even though they made all these changes and those kind of influenced the games because Daisy became a character in the games, and um I think after that movie, and it's just like that movie again I still love because of that. So for them finally, after being scared of doing any Nintendo kind of thing as a movie or TV show for the longest time, because that movie was such a train wreck, and I genuinely like that movie because I think it's more ballsy and weird than a lot of like Disney made that movie in the 90s, which is wild. And it's just so weird. And I'm assuming this will be way more conventional and it'll be a pretty standard Illumination like kids movie. Um and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but I'm still very, very curious with that voice cast, especially like what the tone's going to be. I'm assuming the story is going to be the classic Bowser steals Princess Peach kind of thing. Like, but is it going to be irreverent? Is it going to be more Lego movie? Is it going to try to maybe, there's rumors of the Donkey Kong Country spin-off movie with Seth Rogen, and Donkey Kong Country is another one of those properties that like I replayed all three of those Super Nintendo games this year. I watched the very Canadian animated show back in the day. And that excites me that they could build this weird Nintendo verse, maybe leading into like a Smash Brothers Avengers style movie that like it sounds so dumb, but like that genuinely excites me even as a 33-year-old man. And um I don't know. I don't know what to think of it. Like I don't like the Chris Pratt casting. I like the casting of everyone else. And then the Illumination factor, like I liked the first Despicable Me, but and I liked the first Sing movie. I fucking hate the Minions with a passion. I thought the Grinch movie they did and the Lorax movie were fine. Um, but I I like the potential of where this could lead us, and I think with video game movies with Sonic the Hedgehog and even Detective Pikachu to an extent, neither are great movies, but I think we're slowly making progress of video game movies being at least entertaining, even if they're not great. So
Well,
if
even
this,
Tomb Raider, I think the
yep,
Alicia Vikander movie, takes not the adaptation of just doing Tomb Raider, but looks at it from the point of view of kind of a generic action adventure movie and sort of applies that and makes it work because it's playing within those kind of tropes.
yeah,
And to your point with the baby steps of coming back into, like Nintendo coming back into, the studio system and working to adapt some of their properties, like even though this doesn't really excite me to any extent, I wouldn't be against a Star Fox movie. I
Dude,
think
and
that
if
would
this
be
leads to
amazing.
that, that's all that this movie needs to do. This movie needs to hit a 3 or a 3.5 out of 5, and then we might get a Star Fox movie, and we'll get this Donkey Kong movie. And like a Star Fox movie, speaking of Lightyear, that's what a Star Fox movie like could be from Illumination or something like that, right? And I'm hoping Lightyear does really well, so a Star Fox movie and Mario does well, and then a Star Fox movie is definitely one of those properties that they'll do. Legend of Zelda is one that you got to think is going to happen. And then Star Fox being another. If they're already doing Donkey Kong, that already makes sense because Donkey Kong has its whole thing. King K. Rool, Diddy Kong, Fred Armisen is Cranky Kong. Like they already have basically some of the people there. And
And
then the
doing
two
it animated too, right? I think
is the
like
right
in the way
way.
that
Yeah.
Spider-Verse is kind of sort of doing new things with the sort of style of animation and also paying tribute to, you know, the original source material of being a comic book. I think you can play around with the animation more in something like this than doing another live action
No, the live
movie.
action, that's never happening again
No.
for sure. But um I don't know. I'm holding out hope. I think the cast is so unhinged that it could be like Anya Taylor-Joy as Princess Peach is perfect. Charlie Day as Luigi, weirdly perfect. Jack Black as Bowser, perfect. Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong, would have never expected it, but perfect. And like the only thing throwing this off is Chris Pratt. And I like the directors. They're the guys who did Teen Titans Go to the Movies, which I thought was a pleasant surprise. Like I had no expectations for that movie, and I actually thought it was very funny and very clever. So if they can bring some of that irreverence and kind of humor to Mario and not take it too seriously, I'm hoping Nintendo gives, because Nintendo notoriously very controlling and also makes very weird decisions all the time, like very bizarre decisions.
Well,
So
even in the casting,
um,
that does seem like a
that's
weird
part of
choice
that.
for
Yeah.
Pratt.
Yeah. Anyways, spent a lot of time on Mario. Poor Things. Eric, what's Poor
Yes.
Things again? I
So
put it.
that is Yorgos
Oh God, yes,
Lanthimos's
of course, had to be on the list.
Frankenstein-esque story with him reuniting with Emma Stone. It also has Mark Ruffalo, Willem Dafoe, Christopher Abbott, among many others. I think Catherine Hunter, who is in the tragedy Macbeth, who is the scene stealer, and that is the three weird sisters,
Yeah, she is
has
in
a
it.
part.
Margaret Qualley.
Yeah, and so with that, like, even when you read the
Oh,
plot
Jared
synopsis,
Carmichael's in it too. Jared Carmichael and
Christopher Abbott
Abbott.
reuniting.
Oh wow, okay, yeah,
That
they
is
are.
really interesting. So you have, you know, Yorgos Lanthimos doing a full-on genre movie, but when you read that synopsis, it sounds completely out to lunch, and it's so exciting to think like what that film could be. And there's a guy, like, with maybe the exception of The Lobster, which I think the first half of that film works really well and the second half kind of falls flat.
Oh,
Hasn't
Remy
really,
Youssef as well. Cool.
yeah, hasn't really disappointed. You look at how sort of atmospheric and anxiety driven, and it is a horror movie, The Killing of the Sacred Deer. Or you look at
Oh
how
yeah.
funny, you know, and savage The Favorite is. Or even Dogtooth, like, you know, like his early stuff as well. Like it's all really deadpan and brutal, but always, again, irreverent. And I'm really excited to see like Willem Dafoe play like a Dr. Frankenstein-esque character.
Love that. We have David Fincher's The Killer.
Yeah, so
Um,
this is something he's been trying to do for a while now, to the point that like he's been wanting to collaborate with Andrew Kevin Walker, who wrote Seven. Again, it's based on a graphic novel, and it has Michael Fassbender and Tilda Swinton, and it's about a hitman sort of. It's the cliched story of a hitman sort of gaining conscience and sort of trying to right wrongs and go in a different direction than what he's done before. But in the hands of David Fincher, like, it seems like it's combining, you know, elements of what makes Fincher Fincher. And I think for people that were disappointed with Mank, this seems something that'll be kind of maybe
more up
more
their
your
alley,
speed. Yeah.
which is, I think I'm in that boat. I didn't think Mank stank, but
But you didn't think Mank was dank either.
Yeah. And then keeping with Killers, Scorsese has Killers of the Flower Moon, which is the Apple TV. Paramount sold the rights to Apple TV, right?
Yeah, and I think they're working together on the theatrical distribution of the film
Yes,
still.
I believe that's correct.
It'll play it. I guess like the Tragedy of Macbeth, it'll play in theaters first for maybe a few weeks or a month. I think Scorsese will probably try to extend it for as long as possible. But it's based on the novel, which is also based on the true story of the Osage First Nations being literally sort of screwed over by this group of white men who were marrying into the family because the Osage First Nations were living on land that had oil, and they were sort of, taking that and using that as a way of finance and economics. And you have this group of white guys kind of coming in and saying like, no, we're going to take advantage by marrying into the family. And DiCaprio, who was originally going to play an FBI agent that's now being played by Jesse Plemons, wanted to go with one of the men who marries, I believe in the film she's played by Lily Gladstone, who's really wonderful in Certain Women. And sort of that is fascinating in itself, that DiCaprio would want to go with a character or play a character that is a little bit more kind of reprehensible and sleazy compared to like a classic like FBI agent kind of coming in and investigating the situation.
Yeah, because weren't they surprised that it was like, isn't it more of a supporting role?
They changed the script. So the script was originally like all focused from the point of view of this FBI agent, but because DiCaprio wanted to go with this other role, they kind of retooled it to make it more sort of not completely focused on him, but kind of give that character
a
more to do.
More meat, yeah.
Because the other character that I'm going to be really fascinated to watch is the character that Robert De Niro is playing, and that character specifically has been called the White Devil, and is someone who's responsible for genocide of this First Nations group. So
what a cast though: DiCaprio, Plemons, De Niro, Lily Gladstone, Tantu Cardinal, Brendan Fraser, John Lithgow, tons of people. Like it's gonna be any new Scorsese, you gotta.
And it's just interesting that like you're seeing him sort of take advantage of streamers right now, right? With Netflix with The Irishman, and making a movie that
is going to give him control and money, right? Yeah, and streamers are going to do that. So.
Exactly, and they're going to give him whatever he wants. And like there probably was no sort of, it was probably a bottomless pit in terms of budget for him for the Killers of the Flower Moon, where like it's same thing with Irishman. Like Irishman was supposed to be with Paramount, and that didn't happen because he wanted a budget of almost $200 million. And I don't think the de-aging works in The Irishman, but at least he got to make the movie he wanted to, and I feel the same way with Killers of the Flower Moon. So
it's the perfect thing, because box office isn't the be all end all with these streamers, right? Like sometimes even just the clout of Scorsese making a movie for Apple is what they want out of the project, right? And Apple has so much money that's all they need for this, is just like, maybe it can win us an Oscar or get us some Oscar nominations next year and bring some clout to our studio. We don't mind if we piss away $200 million and we don't really see a return on it. Like that's what's great about streamers right now, I think, is that, they will be giving Marvel sized budgets to filmmakers like Scorsese or, whoever.
Ridley Scott, who has the Napoleon film that he's going to be shooting in January.
You're seeing more and more guys. Spielberg's even, being a hypocrite and working with like, streamers and stuff like that. And, Scorsese, all those guys who said that film is the be all end all, but then, money talks and control talks, and you want to make the film you want to make. And if they're the only ones going, you might not like our release strategy, but we'll give you what you want. And then they'll go, okay, but you have to put it in theaters. And now, luckily, not the silver lining from the pandemic and stuff is like, it seems like cinemas are more like the control has, it's not like it's two big conglomerates fighting, whether it's the cinema owners or these big studios. It's not like it's the little guy versus the big guy. It's just big guy versus big guy. So it's really the smaller theaters that are hurting. But the controls being taken back a little bit of being like, no, the cinemas want the movies. They're like, we'll play whatever now. Netflix logo pop up, we'll show a Netflix trailer. Like it which seemed unheard of a couple of years ago. So
well, especially in like Canada with like Cineplex, where they were
yeah.
so apprehensive, even like during the
Tips.
festival season, right?
You couldn't even be seen. Like if someone from Netflix like showed their face at Scotiabank, they'd be shot on sight. And then we have The Whale, which is the Darren Aronofsky movie. Was it also with Brendan Fraser?
Yes, he is the lead in this. This is based on a stage play about a man who has lost his partner and is also trying to reconnect with his estranged daughter, and how he is literally eating himself to death.
Yeah, he's like bedridden and 600 pounds, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, that should be very, very interesting. I love Aronofsky working with A24, which is cool. They've already shot it, and so yeah, it definitely seems like it is coming out next year. So that is why it's on this list. I will always be excited for a new Aronofsky. Like, is Mother the last thing he did?
Yep.
No. Yeah,
Yeah, it
right?
was. Yep.
I love Mother. I know it's very divisive.
Yeah, and also look at like that's a fascinating movie for Paramount, because when they released that film, like it did
they
horrible.
Didn't know what to do with it.
And I understand that, but like I think A24 will know what to do with The Whale and just with Darren Aronofsky.
Seems like a good fit, right?
Yeah.
Like Mother would have been A24 would have marketed the shit out of that, and it still wouldn't have made a ton of money, but it would have made good A24 money.
Yeah.
Men, which is the what's his name?
Alex Garland.
Like Alex Garland movie. So we since he did TV, he did Debs, which you watched, I did not.
Yes.
Right. And he did that in between
Annihilation.
I'm blanking on
another Paramount movie that didn't do that well.
Yeah. Shout out for them for taking risks. And I think that's why they just went, we're going to punt everything 2 years and we're going to sell off the other stuff. Yeah. So, I mean, any new Alex Garland, like, I'll be pumped for cerebral, like heady sci-fi stuff. Like I do want to get back to Devs. It's just,
I think you would really like Devs.
I know I would, because I've really liked everything Alex Garland really has directed. Because I do like that really heady, weird sci-fi stuff that he does that has the very slick kind of neon lighting kind of cinematography
and soundtracks too. Like I think he doesn't get enough credit for the song choices he uses in film. Like you think, Get Down Saturday Night and Ex Machina and how that is used, and obviously the it's become a meme now with Oscar Isaac dancing. But like he has this wheelhouse where his bread and butter is self-contained locations that are kind of combative with both organic nature around it, but something that has been built by man that is cerebral and artificial, that is trying to fight for its own autonomy. And there's just something about that hits a sweet spot of mine where, like, I feel like he's doing, because obviously he collaborated with Danny Boyle before that, and he's just doing something that I just think works for me personally. And like when you're watching his films, there you can accuse him of kind of making the same movie over and over again, but I think that they work. And again, like with Men, like the premise is you have Jessie Buckley playing this woman who goes on vacation after her ex-husband dies, and everything I've seen from the cinematographer Rob Hardy's Instagram, he is saying it is one of the weirdest things he's ever made. And based on that alone, and based on what Garland has done previously, I mean, you got to be excited for that.
Yeah, another A24 movie. How many A24 movies do we have? Those two. I think maybe just those two.
Yeah.
Couple Neon, couple A24. Then finally wrapping up, we have we already talked about Crimes of the Future, Disappointment Boulevard, which is the Ari Aster film with Joaquin Phoenix. And is Meryl Streep in this too?
No, I don't know.
Did she bail? Did she bail?
I think she maybe bailed for Don't Look Up.
Yeah, she's not in it. No, she's still listed in the cast on, I mean, Wikipedia you can't trust really. But Joaquin Phoenix, Nathan Lane, Parker Posey, Michael Gandolfini, Zoe Lister-Jones, Dennis Menochet, Meryl Streep, Richard Kind, and more. But
a lot of theater actors, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. Even more than that too. But I mean, it says it's a comedy horror movie, and I have no idea, but you know, a new Ari Aster I'm going to be excited for. So
yeah, and it's supposedly, like, some people were saying that it was
nightmare
based on
comedy.
It was based
a
on
4-hour-long nightmare comedy. Sorry,
his short film, Beau is Afraid, which if you watch that, it is one of the weirdest things you could throw on. But also, what I think is fascinating is that from the premise, you have Joaquin Phoenix playing like this, like, very successful entrepreneur type, and there have been some sort of on-set photos of him being aged up. So I'm really interested to see what, and this would be Ari Aster's first feature with a male lead, because both Hereditary and Midsommar were from the point of view of two women. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of interested to see what that'll be like, and again, also using a lot of New York theater actors.
Yeah. No, I'm so pumped. And then finally, The Zone of Interest.
Yes, so this is also an A24 film.
So we have a lot of A24. Never mind.
So this is from Jonathan Glazer, who is best known for directing Sexy Beast, Birth with Nicole Kidman, and more recently Under the Skin with Scarlett Johansson. It's based on a Martin Amis novel of the same name. I don't know how close it is of an adaptation. I think it's a World War II set storyline. But there's no cast listing yet. There's nothing really on the film in terms of how much he's taking from that story. But I'm just excited for another Jonathan Glazer movie, because the last time he released a film was back in like 2013, 2014. So
cool, man. Yeah, I'm not super familiar. Like, I don't think any of his stuff really. But this is your Super Mario Brothers, so
yeah. The Zone of Interest and Super Mario Brothers together at last.
I think that just sums up our back and forth perfectly. So to kind of to go through everything once again, we have Blonde, The Northman, Bones and All, White Noise, Triangle of Sadness, Jackass Forever, The Batman, Thor: Love and Thunder, Nope, Don't Worry Darling, Woman Talking, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1, Turning Red, Super Mario Brothers, Poor Things, The Killer, Killers of the Flower Moon, The Whale, Men, Disappointment Boulevard, The Zone of Interest, and Crimes of the Future. If you want to find all of these movies, we are going to throw them up on a Letterboxd list, which will be on the Untitled_movies Letterboxd page, which is the same place you can get all of our reviews, all of our YouTube links, everything. So just go head over there to Letterboxd, Untitled_movies, and we'll probably be sharing some of our Letterboxd stats next week on the Year in Review show. So we looked to the future, and the next episode we will be looking back at 2021. Eric and I will share our top. You have a top 400 or whatever, but you can go through however many you want. Yeah. I'm gonna go through probably a top 25 of next week. I've already put out on Twitter today. I kind of copied Barack Obama's best of the year thing and just copy and pasted his tweets and put my own stuff in there with Comic Sans. So Eric will also be sharing some stuff on his social that way as well. We're just a couple morons where I put my top 15 films in alphabetical order. But next week I will be doing, the whole countdown 25 to 1. And then Eric and I might have a combined list. We'll see. if you guys want some reviews, you guys can check out our review for Cobra Kai 4, which should be available for you guys to listen to right now. You can also listen to our aforementioned reviews of Spider-Man No Way Home. We have a epic, close to this podcast length, 3-hour long spoiler cast.
It's longer
as
than the
well
movie.
as well as a spoiler-free 45-minute review. Both are on the reviews channel, as well as the spoiler cast over on Conversations. We also have reviews up for Red Rocket, The Kingsman, Licorice Pizza, Nightmare Alley, more. We should have reviews soon for Benedetta, Tragedy of Macbeth, Being the Ricardos, The Lost Daughter, The Matrix Resurrections, The Tender Bar, Serrano, the 355, and more coming up. So I know a lot of those movies came out, in December, but Eric and I thought we'll spread those out through January, since there won't be that many new releases that we're covering. So,
And also because we don't know what's going on in terms of, at least in Ontario,
yeah.
if there's going to be another lockdown or not.
Yeah. So you'll get reviews for all that kind of stuff. They'll trickle through, but I think the big ones right now, you'll get a review for Cobra Kai 4. I think Eric and I are let's review the first episode of Book of Boba Fett, because we've been kind of doing that with all the Disney Plus shows. So it'll be a big streaming week. So we'll have Cobra Kai 4. We'll have the Book of Boba Fett to kind of round out this year of reviews. And then starting next year, you'll get the 355 right away, first week of January. You'll get Scream. You'll get Morbius. Those are kind of the big ones in January. And then you'll see
Morbius.
And then you'll see maybe Chad Kroger will come back for that one. Then you'll get like those other reviews that I mentioned that'll trickle out throughout the month, because Macbeth is going to be dropping on Apple TV Plus. Benedetta will probably be coming to streaming.
It already is. That's already available on iTunes. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Being the Ricardos will be available on Amazon. And Matrix is already available. That one we're a little late on, because Eric and I had to see it when it came out. I guess we could have gone over our impressions, but we'll just save it for the review at this point.
Yeah.
But we're already 3 hours into this. Matrix might be up sooner than the others, just because that's a little bit more timely. But just keep an eye on the reviews channel for all that stuff. Thank you all for listening, guys. This will be the last episode of 2021. So thank you for sticking with us this year. And, weirdly, we've done this podcast more in lockdown and during a pandemic than not in a pandemic, because we're coming in 3 years or 4 years of this podcast. Still unknown if we're going to be covering Sundance. We'll let you guys know. But again, thank you so much for all the support this year. I can't wait for 2022 based on the movies we just talked about and all those honorable mentions and the festivals we'll be covering. And, it'll be an interesting year because I have to kind of get back to work. So the podcast will have to adjust based on that. But I don't think, Eric and I did the podcast while I was working before, so it shouldn't change all that much. It's just scheduling will be a little bit different. So on your end, you might not notice it at all. So, but to be completely transparent, but I'm looking forward to another year of doing this. This is my favorite thing. As you can tell, we just did 3 hours on a Tuesday night, and we're going to record a Cobra Kai review after this. So I really, really do love doing this. And I really do appreciate everyone who sends us messages, because you guys are way too kind to us. And again, self-deprecating, have no idea why you would want to listen to us for 3 hours, but we really, really do appreciate anyone who does. And I'll see the random messages pop up on Twitter or on YouTube or anything like that. And even the people who hate us and yell at us for Dune reviews, you know what? I appreciate you guys for listening too, or watching. But reflecting on another year of this show, we did so much. We covered so many festivals this year. We started a YouTube channel, which again, podcasts on YouTube aren't for everyone, and it adds a lot of extra work, but I feel like, it's fun for me to edit those shows and see the video versions, even if they don't get nearly as much, traction as we are an audio podcast first and foremost, but I think it expands our audience a little bit. We get some people who wouldn't normally, go over on an audio thing and check us out. They'll find us on YouTube and they'll yell at us or tell us we're idiots, or maybe go, "Hey, I really like your reviews." And I go, "Oh, wow, thank you. That's so kind." But starting the video podcast and just the number of festivals we did and the number of movies we covered this year was wild. I don't know the exact number, but
we're well over 300 now.
Yeah, well over 300 reviews. But even this year, I think we hit 100 and I don't even know. We started our letterbox page this year too, right? That was a new thing this year. I think we did so much in a year that was kind of a shit show otherwise, but it's been a blast, man. So thank you, Eric, as well.
Well, thank you, man. I mean, we do this show together, but you do a lot of the technical behind the scenes stuff and kind of keep the mechanics of it all working and the machine kind of going. And for that, I'm grateful because I have no patience for it. But it's also just fun to do because again, we just get to hang out in a period of time where it's hard to do that right now, and so this gives us a reason to sit down
hang out
for
and
a few
talk,
hours. Yeah, exactly. And it's just
because we don't get to hang out in person, right? And I would love, it gives us almost, because here's the thing, my other friends that I don't do a podcast with, I think the relationship suffers because I don't have not that I'm forced to talk to you because of this show. And I mean that in the nicest way possible, of it gives me an excuse or a reason to not be a lazy asshole and be like, well, I text Eric once in a while. That's enough. And that's it, right? We get to hang out for 5 hours tonight and 2 hours of it wasn't even recording and 3 hours of it was. And we're going to hang out and talk Cobra Kai now. And it's just again, it's just hanging out with, my best friend that I would be doing anyway, but the podcast gives us an excuse to do this once a week or twice a week or 3 times a week, however many times we record, and actually just kind of lets us hang out on video. And that's another reason the video podcast is great. And shout out to Zencaster and everyone who's have these great services. And if you want to start a podcast, go do it. It gives you an excuse to hang out with your friends,
reconnect with people that you haven't talked to for 2 years.
You have to start podcasts with each one of your friends, because otherwise you'll just never see them or talk to them as you get older. I'm just shitty because I forget, or I go through my texts every once in a while and I'm like, I gotta message all these people because I haven't talked to everyone in a while, because I become a hermit and just the only person I see or talk to is you and Nevis. So anyways, I love you, buddy. Thank you, everyone. We'll be back next year with our best movies of 2021. As always, my name is Matt Rohrbeck. You can find more of my work around the internet, but mostly at untitledmoviepodcast.com. And you can follow me on all those social medias at Matt Rohrbeck.
And I'm Eric Marchin. You can find more of my video reviews on rogerstv.com/cinemascene and on the social medias at EM6211.
Until next time.
In the year 2022.